Orchestrated reality show. Yep.
Before royal headlines and palace doors, Meghan Markle lived a completely different life, one that started in Chicago with Joe Giuliano, the man she first married. His family, however, rejected her, wiped away their marriage, and held a secret that would shape her path forever. After years of silence, Meghan's first husband has finally broken his silence, and what he revealed has left everyone stunned. Today, we uncover Joe Giuliano's explosive revelation and the truth behind Meghan's first marriage, the secret union Meghan never spoke about. Long before the tiaras, tabloids, and titles, there was another chapter in Meghan Markle's life, one few even knew existed. This story didn't begin with royalty or red carpets. It began with a quiet, unassuming man named Joe Giuliano. He wasn't rich, famous, or powerful. He was simply the man who once held Meghan's heart, long before the world did. At the time, their love seemed innocent, just two young lovers caught up in the thrill of possibility and naive dreams of forever. But behind that picture-perfect beginning, something darker was brewing. According to people close to Joe's family, Meghan's charm hid a far more ambitious side, her fascination with image, her fixation on influence, and her quiet determination to climb higher soon began to worry those around her. The Giuliano family, known in Chicago for their traditional values and protective nature, grew uneasy. They started noticing inconsistencies, small details that didn't add up. Meghan's stories began to shift. Timelines didn't match. One acquaintance recalled that Joe's mother grew suspicious after Meghan claimed she finished school in 1994, even though records suggested otherwise. At first, it seemed like a simple mistake, but as contradictions piled up, the family feared it was something far more deliberate. Some claimed Meghan might have been older than she publicly admitted, possibly born in the late 1970s instead of 1981. If true, it meant she wasn't the naive young woman she appeared to be, but someone already skilled at shaping her image to the Giulianos. That shocking realization changed everything. Their marriage, a quiet, almost secret ceremony reportedly held in a Las Vegas chapel, ended before most even knew it had begun. No photos, no announcements, no public records, just papers filed, sealed, and hidden from view. It was as if the entire relationship had vanished into thin air. Afterward, Joe stepped away from the spotlight entirely, leaving behind memories of a love that the world would never know existed. His family refused to speak publicly, choosing silence over speculation. But as Meghan's fame skyrocketed, first on television and then in the royal spotlight, whispers about her past began to creep back into conversation. Those who remembered the young woman who once walked beside Joe Giuliano started asking questions. Why was that chapter erased so completely? What could make someone wipe away an entire marriage? Why did every trace vanish? Every detail sealed tight? Was it a youthful mistake, or a calculated decision by a woman already planning a larger-than-life future? Nearly 3 decades later, fragments of that hidden story are finally surfacing, and what they reveal isn't a duchess or a celebrity, but a woman carefully crafting her destiny. Long before anyone noticed, before palace gates and global headlines, there was Meghan Markle, standing in a quiet chapel beside Joe Giuliano, making promises the world was never meant to see. Let's uncover the untold story behind that flawless smile, the story of Meghan and the Giuliano family. There was something about her that drew people in, a magnetic charm that made you hang on every word. But behind that radiant smile, some say they sensed something calculated, something almost rehearsed to perfection. The Giuliano family, a proud Italian-American household from Chicago, had once welcomed Meghan with warmth and excitement. Yet not long after, that warmth turned to suspicion, folded into distance and quiet judgment. They began to wonder if the woman who captured their son's heart was truly who she claimed, or someone performing a role, rehearsed to manipulate and impress, hiding her true intentions. You have to understand them. The Giulianos were not a family chasing fame or fortune. They lived by traditions that rarely bent with time. Sundays meant dinner at Nona's table. Fridays meant prayers before every meal. Problems were handled privately, not posted online or shared for appearances. They believed in loyalty, in silence, and in protecting family honor, not for applause, but for integrity and personal pride. When Joe Giuliano introduced Meghan to them in the mid-2000s, they saw a bright young woman with big dreams. She was full of promise, speaking passionately about auditions in Los Angeles, acting, writing, and being seen by the world. At first, her ambition was refreshing and exciting, something different that sparked admiration. But that admiration didn't last long. Unease began to creep in, slowly, almost unnoticed. It wasn't what she said, it was how she said it. Every sentence sounded too polished. Every smile felt rehearsed. She could lock eyes with someone and, as one family friend later whispered, make you believe anything. That was the moment when doubt started to quietly take root. What began as polite curiosity soon turned into cautious observation. Meghan's world revolved around opportunity, scripts, photo shoots, networking, visibility, and the constant chase for recognition. The Giuliano family's world revolved around family, tradition, and quiet values. To them, marriage was about partnership, loyalty, and shared life, not publicity. They valued staying grounded, while she seemed destined to soar above it all. That small difference, at first barely noticeable, began to pull their two worlds apart. It started quietly: missed Sunday dinners, forgotten birthdays, short visits to Chicago replaced by longer stays in California. Phone calls from Joe's mother went unanswered, often met with polite excuses. Meghan was busy, chasing auditions, busy building a future that didn't quite fit their way of life. The family worried, not because Meghan was ambitious, but because they feared she was chasing a dream that left no room for their son. She didn't want roots, one insider said softly. She wanted wings. Joe's father, known for his strong traditional values, reportedly tried to reason with her. One evening, he told Meghan, "Marriage isn't built on red carpets. It's built on quiet days, shared work, and faith." But Meghan saw the world differently. She had a vision that stretched far beyond Chicago's quiet suburbs. She wanted to be known, to be remembered, and in her mind, maybe Joe didn't fit into that picture forever. As time passed, the warmth drained from the Giuliano home. Conversations turned into silences, visits turned tense. By the time anyone realized how far things had gone, it was already too late. Meghan had become, in their eyes, not a daughter-in-law, but a visitor passing through. There's a certain irony in how it all unfolded. Years later, Meghan Markle's name would echo across the world, not linked to a modest Chicago family, but to one of the most famous institutions in history. The Giuliano whispers began to resurface. Some said they weren't surprised, others claimed they always saw it coming. The story was never about fame, it was about trust. And maybe that's what makes this chapter so compelling. Was Meghan simply misunderstood by a family too traditional to see her potential? Or were the Giulianos among the first to glimpse a side of her the public wouldn't see until much later? Whatever the truth, one thing is clear. Their silence was not born of hatred, but heartbreak. They had opened their home to someone they hoped would cherish their son and their values. But as her ambitions grew and the spotlight followed, they realized Meghan's path and theirs were never meant to walk side by side. Some say the family still refuses to speak of that time. Others believe they made peace long ago. But one thing remains certain. Long before royal titles, global headlines, and televised interviews, the Giuliano family experienced a story of ambition, love, and quiet heartbreak that no one would ever forget. There was a quiet Chicago house where the first questions about Meghan Markle were whispered, not out of jealousy or judgment, but out of disbelief. Sometimes the hardest thing to accept isn't that someone changed. It's realizing they were never quite who you thought they were, but what really happened in Chicago before Meghan became a global name. Let's dive into the hidden stories that quietly shaped her early life, the secret they buried. Meghan and the Giuliano family, who chose silence for years. Whispers floated through Chicago's calm neighborhoods, stories that never made the papers, yet refused to die in private conversations, stories that lingered quietly between the glamour that would later define Meghan Markle. In the calm, protective world of the Giuliano family, there existed a chapter no one was supposed to read, a love that began in warmth but ended in silence. A promise that once seemed eternal was later sealed behind closed doors by the mid-1990s. Meghan had already begun crafting her image, bright, ambitious, and unshakably determined. Joe Giuliano, on the other hand, came from a world of tradition where family meant everything and privacy wasn't just preferred, it was sacred. Their wedding in Las Vegas had been a small, joyful affair, but while it started as a union built on affection, something quietly shifted. Once the celebrations faded, the Giulianos, proud of their roots and deeply protective of their name, began to feel tension rise. Known for keeping family matters within the family, the Giulianos valued discretion above all. Meghan, however, moved to a different rhythm, leaning toward independence, reinvention, and ambition. She was restless, hungry for something beyond the familiar walls of Chicago. When the first rumors surfaced, those whispers sparked a silent storm inside the Giuliano household. What should have been a moment of happiness instead became a defining fork in the road. According to those close to the family, there was no dramatic confrontation, no shouting match, just a quiet, heavy decision made around a dining table that suddenly felt colder. The Giulianos, determined to avoid public attention, reportedly chose to handle the situation in their own way. They would protect the family's privacy at all costs. Meanwhile, Meghan was told she could pursue her dreams, but only if she agreed to leave the past behind. By the summer of 1995, insiders say a baby girl was born. Yet unlike most new lives that spark celebration, this one was wrapped in mystery. Neighbors later recalled seeing a child at Giuliano gatherings, vaguely introduced as a relative's daughter. Never confirmed, never discussed again. No birth announcements, no public records, and no public connection to Meghan's name. It was as if the story had been erased before it even began. Joe stayed close, maintaining quiet contact, but Meghan was already stepping into a new world. Northwestern University, early acting work, auditions, and the first glimpses of the life she would later pursue relentlessly. Her path was unfolding just as she'd always imagined. To her, it may have felt like progress, forward motion, but to the Giulianos, it felt like abandonment. They believed they had offered her everything: family loyalty, unconditional belonging, and in return, she had chosen ambition. One friend of Joe's was once overheard saying, "She didn't just leave him. She left everything that made her one of us." When the marriage ended, it didn't collapse in public. It simply vanished. No tabloids, no messy divorce filings, just an annulment, quietly processed and permanently sealed. Those familiar with the family insisted it came with a single binding condition: silence. Meghan would have her clean slate, and the Giulianos would have their secrecy. Whether money exchanged hands remains unclear. Some say it did, others say it didn't matter. What mattered was erasing an entire story before the world could tell it. Yet even silence can echo behind closed doors. The pain never truly left. The nursery stayed untouched. The memories lingered, and the question why hung in the air. To outsiders, Meghan Markle appeared to be a woman who built herself from nothing, sculpting her image through discipline and grace. But to those who remembered the Giulianos, she was someone who had everything and walked away before the world could even glimpse what she left behind. What really drove Meghan to leave it all behind? Let's dive into the mystery of the Giulianos' sudden disappearance and the hidden echoes of that vanishing act. By the time the Giulianos left Chicago, it wasn't just their house that felt empty. It was as if their entire existence had been carefully erased. No goodbyes, no forwarding address, not even a hint of where they went. The moving truck rolled in before sunrise, and by noon, the home that once buzzed with laughter and weekend barbecues stood hollow and silent. Curtains fluttered in the open air, and the faint smell of lemon polish lingered in the rooms, stripped bare of life. Neighbors stood on the sidewalks that afternoon, whispering guesses no one could prove. Some said Joe Giuliano had gotten into trouble with the wrong people. Others swore his wife Anna had taken the children and vanished overseas. But what made the story linger wasn't their disappearance, it was what they left behind. Months later, a woman named Clara, who had once lived across the street, received a small brown parcel with no return address. It was postmarked from a tiny coastal town in southern Italy. Inside lay a delicate silver bracelet, the kind a mother might give her daughter. It bore one simple engraving: Lucia. The problem was, no one had ever heard of Lucia in the Giuliano family. Not Joe and Anna's neighbors, not their relatives who occasionally visited from New Jersey. The name appeared from nowhere, like a whisper from a secret past. Clara took the bracelet to her parish priest, hoping for answers. But the moment he saw it, his expression changed. He told her to burn it immediately and never speak of it again. That warning only deepened the mystery within Chicago's Italian community. Quiet rumors began to take shape. Some claimed the Giulianos had fled to Calabria under assumed names. Others insisted they'd been spotted in Montreal months later. But beneath the swirl of gossip was one persistent, unsettling theory. The child named Lucia wasn't Joe's. It was Meghan's. At first, the claim sounded absurd, yet the timing raised questions too strange to ignore. Meghan Markle's early years were carefully documented, but there was a peculiar gap in her college timeline, a missing semester that had quietly vanished from the records. Could it be coincidence, or was it deliberately hidden? What really happened during Meghan's missing semester, and how did it connect to the Giuliano family's sudden disappearance? This was a puzzling mystery that refused to fade. The story of the Giuliano family didn't end. It simply dissolved like ink washed from a page. Their Chicago home, once alive with noise and laughter, now stood abandoned. Paint peeled from the windows, and the mailbox still faintly carried their name. Neighbors said they left quietly, taking nothing but a few suitcases. No farewell, no forwarding address, no explanation. To most, it looked like a routine move, but those who knew them better whispered that something about their exit felt rehearsed. Too quiet, too precise, almost as if they didn't want to relocate. They wanted to vanish. For years, silence was the only answer anyone got. The family's phone numbers went dead. Social records stopped cold, and even relatives who once exchanged Christmas cards heard nothing again. Some thought they had fled financial troubles. Others believed they were hiding from something darker, something powerful enough to erase an entire family from existence. It wasn't until much later that faint traces of the Giulianos began surfacing across the Atlantic. A closed bank account in Milan, a property deed signed under an unfamiliar name in Sicily. Locals in a small coastal town recalled a reserved couple who spoke Italian with an American lilt. The woman introduced herself as Anna Lucia, known for her strict manners, but also for an unexpected, quiet kindness. The man was simply Joseph, quiet, polite, always glancing over his shoulder. With him was a little girl who rarely spoke. She never attended the local school and was often seen staring at the sea, as if waiting for something, or someone. No one asked too many questions. In southern Italy, secrets are kept like heirlooms, polished, protected, and never spoken aloud. Yet even among those accustomed to mystery, the Giulianos stood out. They lived modestly, paid in cash, and avoided the camera lens. Once, during a village festival, someone tried to take a group photograph. Joseph stepped aside, his hand on the child's shoulder, politely declining with a half smile that didn't reach his eyes. Years later, journalists digging into Meghan's early past, long before the palace, before the headlines, found gaps that defied logic. Entire months missing from official timelines, sealed documents, and a curious photograph taken near Lake Como in the late 1990s. In it, Meghan appears walking along a narrow path, her face turned toward the water, but behind her, almost out of focus, a man holds a little girl's hand. His face is hidden, but his stance, his build, something about it raised questions no one could answer. Who was that man? And why had the image vanished from public archives? Not long after, it resurfaced online. The more investigators searched, the more the story unraveled into quiet speculation. Some suggested the Giulianos knew something, or someone, they weren't supposed to. Others hinted at hidden family ties, fragments of truth buried beneath layers of reinvention. Whatever the reason, their silence became their shield. Today, that abandoned house in Chicago remains untouched, frozen in time. Neighbors still say that on quiet nights, you can almost hear a door creak open and the echo of footsteps fading down the hall. And somewhere far away, in an Italian village where English words are still whispered with caution, the name Giuliano lingers like a ghost. A reminder that some disappearances aren't about escape, they're about survival. Perhaps the Giulianos didn't vanish to hide from the world. Perhaps they vanished to protect something the world was never meant to find. But what secret could tie an abandoned Chicago house to whispers in a distant Italian village? Let's dive into the mystery that refuses to fade. The forgotten ties of Meghan Markle. Decades have passed, yet the whispers have never truly gone away, floating somewhere between royal grandeur and ordinary life, a story that refuses to rest, buried under silence, protected by those who once vowed loyalty to a name now almost erased. Giuliano. Long before the world knew Meghan Markle as the Duchess of Sussex, another name seemed to follow her shadow, appearing in stray records and sealed files that should never have met public eyes. It wasn't until 2024 that a freelance journalist named Aaron Vale stumbled upon a string of forgotten archives in Rome, and that's when the whispers began to take form again. What began as routine research into missing inheritance documents quickly spiraled into something far stranger. Pages with blurred dates, redacted names, and in a recurring signature, a Giuliano. Aaron's curiosity turned into obsession. He dug through immigration logs, baptism records, and even expired passports, each hinting at a family that had once lived quietly in the Italian countryside. Before disappearing in the late 1990s, locals spoke of a couple, Joseph and Anna Lucia Giuliano, who had left behind a small villa near Palermo and were never seen again. But what startled Aaron most wasn't their disappearance. It was what came after. One spring evening, an anonymous message landed in his inbox. No words, no sender, just a grainy photograph taken on a sunlit street. Somewhere in Italy, a woman in a scarf stood beside a flower stall, half hidden from the camera, and beside her, a young woman smiled shyly. The resemblance was uncanny. The same eyes, the same smile. The image seemed to whisper a question. Was this woman truly a stranger or someone the world already thought it knew? The file's metadata placed the photo in 2015, just 2 years before Meghan's engagement to Prince Harry. Coincidence or connection? Every inquiry Aaron made after that was met with polite deflection or sudden silence. Records that once existed seemed to vanish overnight. Even officials who had once been helpful now claimed ignorance, yet strange details began to surface in Milan. A notary confirmed a sealed legal transfer linked to an untraceable trust. The signature once again bore Giuliano. Around the same time, a British newspaper briefly reported a confidential visit made by a royal representative to Italy, only for the story to be quietly retracted hours later. Then, there was the rumour of a young woman applying for dual citizenship, listing her father's surname as Giuliano and her place of birth as Los Angeles. Was it all coincidence, or the outline of a truth too complex to reveal? An aging priest, once stationed near Naples, offered only a cryptic comment when asked about the Giulianos, leaving Aaron with more questions than answers. "You cannot bury the truth," he whispered. "It grows roots even in stone today." Aaron still searches, convinced the photo was not a hoax, but a key, a silent link between two worlds, one royal and one quietly erased. Perhaps that woman at the flower stall knows more than anyone dares to admit. Perhaps the Giulianos never truly vanished, and somewhere in those blurred lines of history lies a secret waiting to be uncovered. The monarchy may have hoped the world would forget, but secrets have a way of resurfacing. So what do you think really happened between Meghan and Joe Giuliano's family? Why did they turn away from her, and what mysteries were left behind? We want to hear your thoughts. Don't forget to like, share, and comment below, and make sure to subscribe for more shocking royal revelations you won't hear anywhere else. Your opinion could uncover the next layer of this incredible story.
Isn't there some speculation that she was on Epstein's yacht at one point in time? There was like photos with her and Prince Andrew way back in the day when she was like in her early 20s. That's why a lot of these celebrities that start these things, they can't keep up. You know, like the Meghan Markle.
Instead of making a claim, Joe Rogan dropped a question. And that question hit like a shockwave. Wasn't there some speculation that she was on Epstein's yacht at one point in time?
All the ongoing fallout, whether it's about Harry and Meghan, whether it's about Prince Andrew, or the artist formerly known as Prince Andrew, and his relationship with Jeffrey Epstein.
The moment those words landed, the temperature changed fast. Conversations froze. The room tightened up, and online reactions erupted instantly, like a fuse had been lit. That single sentence didn't accuse anyone of anything, but it didn't need to. It hovered in the air, heavy and uncomfortable, forcing people to think about connections they'd rather ignore. Within minutes, clips were spreading, comment sections were melting down, and according to reports, legal teams were suddenly very busy making calls behind closed doors. January 2026 was supposed to mark a clean slate. Meghan Markle had already been through years of relentless coverage, tabloid storms, family tensions, and constant public scrutiny. She believed the loudest whispers had finally faded, especially the old yacht talk, the elite party rumours, and speculation tied to powerful circles that had been pushed aside through years of disciplined image control and strategic silence. In her mind, those stories were ancient history, carefully managed, carefully buried, and no longer part of the public conversation. She believed she had come out the other side untouched. Then Joe Rogan spoke, and everything cracked. The polished narrative didn't wobble slowly. It collapsed all at once, like a stacked deck hit by hurricane winds. What followed wasn't just surprising, it was deeply unsettling. Because when the most listened to podcaster on earth starts asking questions no one else will touch, the damage spreads fast and wide. This wasn't gossip framed as fact. It was curiosity aimed straight at yachts, elite social environments, and historical overlaps involving one of the most controversial figures linked to modern royal scandals. Once that door opens, it doesn't close quietly. There's no undoing that moment. And this is what makes the situation explosive. Joe Rogan doesn't bend for anyone. Not Hollywood, not royalty, not billion-dollar image teams working overtime. When something feels off, he keeps pulling until the whole structure starts shaking. That's his reputation and people know it. So the real question became obvious. What exactly did Joe stumble onto? Why did Meghan's team reportedly shift into crisis mode so quickly? Why were internal strategies suddenly being reassessed? And what do these alleged yacht photos supposedly show that made this moment hit harder than ever before? Stay locked in, because this angle reshapes how people view Meghan Markle's past through the Joe Rogan lens. Let's be crystal clear right now. Joe Rogan isn't some background voice on cable news with a shrinking audience. He commands roughly 200 million listeners across platforms, and when he speaks, the internet doesn't pause. It reacts instantly. That reach alone changes the stakes completely. Time magazine once labelled him one of the most influential figures alive, and that wasn't hype. When Rogan discusses anything, clips ripple across social media within hours, sometimes minutes. Algorithms pick it up, commentators respond, and suddenly a single question becomes a global conversation. And here's why public figures find him impossible to manage. Joe doesn't follow scripted rules. He doesn't soften language for titles, and he doesn't adjust tone for status. Duchess, celebrity, executive. None of it shields anyone from his curiosity. If a story doesn't add up, he says so. No filters, no clean-up crew, and no apologies. This also isn't his first run-in with Meghan. Back in 2020, he openly joked that she was reshaping Prince Harry's life into a celebrity-driven brand project. He predicted endorsements, product deals, and heavy monetization. And that prediction aged very well. Then, in 2023, when Meghan spoke about feeling objectified during her time on Deal or No Deal, Rogan responded with blunt sarcasm. No sympathy, no cushioning, just a straight reaction questioning expectations. That's his style, cold, direct, and unapologetic. So when reports surfaced that Rogan was now revisiting long-circulating yacht speculation and drawing alleged links through elite social circles connected to Prince Andrew, the reaction was instant. Alarm bells didn't ring, they screamed. Here's the uncomfortable truth. You can pressure tabloids with legal threats. You can manage royal press through access and relationships. You can guide narratives through traditional media channels. But Joe Rogan doesn't operate inside that system. He can't be quietly leaned on, can't be boxed in, and can't be bought out softly. He sits completely outside the structure Meghan's team knows how to navigate. And when someone with that level of independence and reach starts questioning past associations, exclusive gatherings, and closed-door social pipelines that nobody wants examined, a manageable situation becomes a full-blown image crisis fast. The yacht rumours weren't new, but they had never been this loud. Now pay close attention, because this part matters. None of this information is brand new. The yacht speculation has circulated for years. The elite social overlaps have been tracked by independent researchers for over a decade. Questions about Meghan's early connections existed long before her marriage into the royal family. So what changed? What changed is that no one with Joe Rogan's reach ever spoke about it openly until now. That single shift altered everything. And that brings us to a name you need to recognize: Kirby Summers. Summers is an author who has spent years researching elite social environments and power networks. Her work includes writing an unauthorized biography connected to Ghislaine Maxwell. Yes, that Ghislaine Maxwell, while examining how access and influence moved quietly through exclusive spaces. According to Summers, her research allegedly uncovered links suggesting Meghan may have crossed paths with Prince Andrew long before she ever met Prince Harry. We're talking early 2000s, decades ago, long before global fame. Summers claims that during this period, there may have been photographs allegedly showing Meghan on a yacht in Phuket, Thailand, at a time when Prince Andrew was reportedly present in the same region. Important note, these claims are alleged and unproven. Stop and picture that scenario for a moment. A young Meghan Markle, not yet famous, not yet royal, in elite surroundings during the Epstein-era timeline, overlapping with Prince Andrew's known movements. That alone explains why people feel uneasy. Here's the chilling part. Summers claims these images were never published by major outlets. And that's the question Joe Rogan keeps pressing. Why? Why would large media organizations allegedly hold such material and choose silence? What level of pressure keeps images like that buried? And who benefits most from that silence? Before moving further, another name keeps resurfacing. Marcus Anderson. Anderson is a senior figure at Soho House, a private members network known for elite access. This isn't just a social club. It's a networking engine for powerful people, private rooms, invitation-only gatherings, and carefully curated introductions designed to stay out of public view. Here's where eyebrows rise. Anderson is widely known as the person who introduced Meghan to Prince Harry. That fact is well documented, but Rogan keeps asking the follow-ups no one else touches. Why was Meghan selected as the right introduction? What kind of relationship existed beforehand? And why was there such confidence behind a match that would change the monarchy's future? Anderson has been embedded in elite circles since 2001, over 2 decades of access, introductions, and influence. According to Summers' research discussed by Rogan, some of those networks allegedly overlapped with circles associated with the Maxwell-Epstein era. Think about that carefully. If Meghan was being introduced to high-level figures long before Harry entered the picture, then their meeting may not have been random at all. Rogan frames it as strategic networking at the highest level, and he's repeated that idea to millions. Now let's return to Thailand, because this is where things tighten further. Summers doesn't just claim these photos exist, she claims mainstream outlets may already possess them. Alleged images showing Meghan on a yacht in Phuket, Thailand, dated around 2001. That's over 2 decades ago, before Suits, before fame, before anyone knew her name. Yes, some online images were debunked and correctly identified as someone else. Fact-checkers did their job. But here's the key distinction Rogan keeps stressing. Summers is not talking about viral internet photos. She's referring to alleged unpublished images held by major organizations. And that difference changes everything. If such photos exist and show overlapping presence during that historical timeline, the implications go far beyond awkward headlines. It would reopen one of the darkest conversations tied to modern royal controversy. So why the silence? Why now? And why does this story refuse to disappear? Joe Rogan has theories, and they're not comforting. Instead of facts being debated, the familiar defensive playbook kicked in fast. Legal warnings, lawsuit anxiety, palace sensitivities, and defamation fears all swirling at once. That's usually how stories involving powerful people disappear overnight, buried under pressure and silence. But this time, the strategy hit a wall because Joe Rogan doesn't play inside that system. Joe keeps asking the questions nobody else will touch. Why was there never a real investigation? Why has no one pushed for clarity? And why do alleged photos, if they exist, remain completely untouchable after all these years? Those questions don't accuse, but they corner, and that's what makes them dangerous. Then, there's another documented detail Rogan keeps circling like a spotlight that won't shut off. Meghan Markle received an invitation to Yacht Week 2016 in Croatia. That detail alone raised eyebrows, because Yacht Week isn't some quiet sailing retreat with calm waters and sunset photos. GQ famously described Yacht Week as Sodom and Gomorrah at sea. Attendees from earlier years openly called it Tinder at sea, a non-stop party environment where wealthy men and attractive women mixed under very specific, unspoken dynamics. That reputation wasn't accidental, and it wasn't hidden. Did Meghan attend? No one claims certainty, but the invitation existed, the access existed, and that's the part Rogan keeps pressing. He's not declaring outcomes. He's questioning patterns. Once again, the connections line up too cleanly to ignore. Rogan isn't stating facts. He's asking why these dots keep aligning over and over again. And when 200 million people hear those questions at the same time, the polished narrative starts showing cracks. This is exactly why Joe Rogan changes everything. Let me break down why his involvement is a total game changer, because this explains why Meghan's team reportedly shifted into panic mode. When tabloids float yacht rumours, people roll their eyes and move on. When royal authors mention them, critics shout speculation and tune out. When anonymous accounts online post theories, they're dismissed as noise. But when Joe Rogan calmly dissects the same topics on the biggest podcast platform on earth, it hits completely different. Joe Rogan has already survived platform backlash. He pushed through the Spotify controversy. He absorbed cancellation attempts. Media attacks didn't slow him down, they amplified him. If anything, they made him bigger, tougher, and more independent. At this stage, Joe is nearly impossible to shake, and that's what makes him a nightmare for anyone trying to manage a public narrative. So when Joe openly asks things like, "What's the deal with Meghan and yacht culture?" or "Why does Marcus Anderson keep appearing in Epstein-era social overlaps?" people don't scroll past. They pause, they listen, they start asking their own questions. And here's where Joe's approach gets surgical. He keeps coming back to one question that cuts through everything else. Why hasn't mainstream media properly investigated this? That's the moment his audience leans forward, because once millions of listeners start wondering the same thing, sharing clips, replaying segments, and pushing for clarity, polished narratives stop holding their shape. You can't pressure Joe with legal threats the way you can pressure tabloids. You can't manage his access the way you manage royal correspondence. You can't buy him off and you can't sideline him. He is the platform. That's exactly why multiple reports suggest Meghan's team went into full crisis mode once Joe started revisiting these topics, not because he made accusations, but because he asked questions they couldn't control. Now imagine this from Meghan's perspective. You've spent years refining your public image. You've hired elite PR firms. You've chosen interviews carefully. You've leaned on friendly outlets. You've used legal pressure to suppress stories you don't like. Then Joe Rogan, sitting in a studio in Austin, Texas, with a microphone and 200 million listeners, starts calmly revisiting uncomfortable chapters from your past. Questions about elite social circles, questions about yacht culture, questions about proximity to disgraced royals, and there's nothing you can do to stop it. You can't sue him. He's asking questions. You can't pressure his platform. He's too big. You can't ignore him. His reach makes that impossible. You're stuck, and Joe knows it. That's why he keeps circling the topic. Different episodes, different guests, different angles. He's not letting it fade because he understands something crucial. As long as the questions stay alive, millions of people will keep demanding answers. Now let's zoom in on the Marcus Anderson angle, because this is where Joe's focus turns razor sharp. And for good reason. Who is Marcus Anderson? On paper, he's the global membership director for Soho House. But look closer and you see something far more interesting. He's a connector, a facilitator, a man whose career revolves around introducing the right people to each other at exactly the right time. And in 2016, he made one of the most consequential introductions of his life. He introduced Meghan Markle to Prince Harry. That part is documented, accepted, and not controversial. But Joe isn't satisfied with surface facts. He asks what comes next. How does a membership director at a private social club confidently introduce a cable TV actress to someone sixth in line to the British throne? What made him believe that match would work? And what kind of relationship existed before Harry entered the picture? Those aren't wild accusations. They're logical questions, yet no one seems eager to answer them. Marcus Anderson joined Soho House in 2001. That's more than 2 decades inside elite, invitation-only circles. Soho House isn't just a club. It's a private networking ecosystem designed to keep powerful interactions out of public view. No photos, no recordings, no leaks. That secrecy isn't accidental, it's the product. And Anderson's role inside that system matters. He decides who meets who. He opens doors most people don't even know exist. He connects ambitious people with powerful ones behind closed doors. Now here's where the discomfort grows. According to research discussed by Joe Rogan, including work by Kirby Summers, Anderson's networking web allegedly extended beyond actors and investors. Some researchers suggest he may have facilitated introductions between Meghan and high-level figures, allegedly including Prince Andrew, long before Harry came into the picture. Pause on that for a moment. If Meghan had been moving through elite networks for years, introduced to billionaires, power players, and possibly even controversial royals, then her meeting with Harry stops looking random and starts looking structured. Joe frames it as strategic networking at the highest level, and he's been drilling that idea into his audience repeatedly. But here's what really fires Joe up. Soho House itself has links to controversial figures. Take billionaire Ron Burkle, a long-time member since the early 2000s. His social overlaps with Epstein-linked circles have raised public questions in the past. When Joe starts connecting those dots, Burkle's membership, Anderson's gatekeeping role, Meghan's presence in elite spaces, and the alleged Prince Andrew overlap, a picture begins forming that Soho House absolutely does not want examined. Because once people start asking what actually happened inside those private rooms, what kinds of introductions were facilitated, and whether ambitious individuals were being connected to powerful men as part of a larger pattern, the entire model comes under scrutiny. Soho House can't deny facilitating connections. That's literally their business. But they also can't investigate Anderson publicly without risking exposure of how the whole operation really works. Joe's questions put them in a no-win position. Defend Meghan and Anderson, or stay silent and let speculation grow. Either way, the mystery around their secretive networking machine gets dragged into daylight, and that's exactly what Joe wants. And this is where Joe Rogan's strategy becomes devastatingly effective. He isn't accusing, he isn't declaring conclusions, he's asking precise questions that Meghan's team reportedly cannot answer. And that silence is what drives them crazy. Each question lands like a pressure point, and Joe keeps lining them up one by one, deliberately, methodically, without backing off. Rather than throwing accusations around, Joe Rogan lines his argument up as a series of questions, and the first one hits immediately. Why was Meghan invited to Yacht Week 2016 in Croatia if she wasn't already part of those elite social circles? That's not rumour or guesswork. The invitation itself is documented, and that's where the discomfort begins. Yacht Week isn't a casual getaway you stumble into by accident. This wasn't a quiet sailing trip with friends and ocean views. GQ famously described that event as Sodom and Gomorrah at sea, and people who attended earlier years openly labelled it Tinder at Sea. The reputation was well known long before 2016, and access wasn't random. So the question stands, how does a cable TV actress land an invite to an ultra-exclusive, reputation-heavy event like that? Joe doesn't offer an answer. He simply lets the question hang there, unanswered, because the access alone demands an explanation. Then Joe moves straight to question 2. Why did Marcus Anderson have such deep access to Meghan's personal and professional life? Not surface-level acquaintance access, real influence. What was the nature of that relationship? And why was he so confident introducing her to Prince Harry, one of the most protected individuals on the planet? That introduction wasn't casual. It wasn't harmless. It wasn't a blind date between equals. Joe keeps stressing that point because confidence like that doesn't come from nowhere. Question 3 hits even closer to home. How exactly did Meghan afford the high-end lifestyle she appeared to be living at the time? Yes, she was earning money from suits. Respectable money. But Joe points out that the events she attended, the travel she enjoyed, and the circles she moved in typically cost far more than a standard cable TV salary supports. Ultra-exclusive events, elite destinations, private networking environments. That level of access raises questions, not accusations, but questions that don't go away. Then comes question 4. Why was she attending these elite gatherings alongside billionaires and power players? What was the entry point? Who opened those doors? Who vouched for her in spaces where access is tightly controlled? Those rooms don't open themselves. Joe keeps reminding listeners of that. Someone always facilitates access. And then question 5. What exactly was Meghan's relationship with Ron Burkle, the billionaire investor, long-time Soho House member, and figure whose name has appeared in discussions about controversial social overlaps in the past? Again, Joe isn't declaring wrongdoing. He's asking why Burkle's name keeps appearing in the same ecosystem: Soho House, elite networking, powerful social circles, and how Meghan fit into that environment. But the biggest question, the one Joe repeats relentlessly, lands like a hammer strike. Did Meghan know Prince Andrew before she ever met Prince Harry? That question alone shifts everything. Here's why these questions are so powerful. They aren't insults, rumours, or wild theories. They're built on documented invitations, verified introductions, and photographed attendance at exclusive events. Meghan can't brush them off as internet nonsense. She can't ignore them either. They're being asked by the most influential podcaster on Earth. And according to critics, she can't easily answer them because the answers don't neatly fit the narrative that's been carefully constructed over years. Joe makes this crystal clear to his audience. I'm not saying Meghan was anything, he repeatedly stresses. I'm laying out the connections, the access, the timeline. Now explain it. Then he steps back and lets nearly 200 million listeners draw their own conclusions. That strategy is brutally effective. People trust conclusions they reach themselves far more than conclusions they're told to believe. And here's the trap Meghan finds herself in. If she stays silent, critics say it looks like avoidance. If she responds, she fuels the story and gives Joe new angles to explore. Joe can always ask follow-up questions. She can't easily close the loop. She's boxed in, and Joe knows it. That's why he keeps circling the issue, keeps revisiting the connections, keeps suggesting that powerful people don't want certain questions examined. And the silence from Meghan's camp, that silence speaks loudly. Because if these questions had clean, harmless explanations, wouldn't they have been laid out already? Now let's talk about the part that hits Prince Harry hardest and doesn't get enough attention. Joe Rogan has already mocked Harry publicly. He's questioned his decisions. He's suggested Meghan approach his life with ambition rather than romance. But if yacht-related speculation ever gains real mainstream traction, and if the Prince Andrew question embeds itself in public perception, Harry's image takes a devastating hit. The story flips instantly. He stops looking like a prince who followed his heart and starts looking like someone who may have been played. Put yourself in Harry's position for a moment. Imagine millions of people openly wondering whether your wife may have crossed paths with your disgraced uncle through elite social circles long before she met you. Imagine the fairy tale you sold the world suddenly being reframed as strategic networking at the highest level. Imagine the Soho House meeting no longer sounding random, but calculated. That's the scenario Joe keeps laying out, not as fact, but as a possibility. And the damage comes from the questions themselves. Because once those questions are asked, they don't disappear, they linger, they spread, they change how people look at the relationship. This is the image being painted for Joe's massive audience. Harry, isolated from his family, cut off from royal protection, living in California, deeply tied to a woman whose past connections raise unanswered questions. It's harsh. It's uncomfortable. And Harry has no easy defence. He can't prove Meghan never crossed paths with Andrew. He can't undo Marcus Anderson's role. He can't retroactively explain how Meghan accessed elite circles before they met. Reports suggest Harry is already unsettled by resurfacing yacht rumours, already questioning what parts of Meghan's past are fully understood. already wondering whether William and Charles had reasons to be cautious from the start. The royal family reportedly raised concerns before the marriage. They asked questions. They hesitated. Harry dismissed those concerns as jealousy and outdated thinking. But what if they weren't guessing? What if they had information Harry didn't want to hear? What if the very connections Joe Rogan keeps spotlighting were the reason for Palace hesitation? If Joe keeps pressing, stacking questions, highlighting timelines, pointing out access that doesn't align, the impact on Harry only grows. The narrative shifts again. It's no longer, Harry chose love over duty. It becomes, Harry may have been maneuvered into a relationship shaped by elite networking. That reframing alone is catastrophic for public perception, and once 200 million people absorb it, there's no putting it back in the box. Now let's go deeper into the Soho House machine, because Joe's focus here is intentional. Mainstream media treats Soho House like a harmless creative club. Joe doesn't buy that. He digs. And what he finds is a sophisticated networking system designed to operate away from scrutiny. Soho House thrives on secrecy, no photos, no recordings, no leaks. That secrecy isn't accidental, it's the product. It's a place where influential people meet without witnesses, where deals, introductions and relationships form out of public sight. Ron Burkle, billionaire investor and Soho House member since the early 2000s, is just one example of the powerful figures tied to that ecosystem. His name has appeared in discussions about controversial social overlaps before, and he's far from alone. Soho House membership has included major power players across entertainment, business, and politics. Some celebrated, some controversial. And when Joe Rogan asks what actually went on inside those rooms, what kind of networking Meghan was doing, and whether Marcus Anderson was facilitating introductions between ambitious individuals and powerful men as part of a broader pattern, Soho House faces a serious problem. They can't deny facilitating connections, that's literally their business model. But they also can't investigate Anderson publicly without exposing how the entire operation works. Anderson wasn't rogue. He was doing exactly what the system trained him to do. Joe's questions force a no-win scenario. Defend Meghan and Anderson, or stay silent and let speculation grow. Either way, the mystery around that secretive networking system gets dragged into the light, and Meghan's carefully shaped origin story starts cracking fast. Because the official version says Meghan and Harry met by chance through a mutual friend at Soho House, a neat, romantic setup. Joe suggests something far more calculated. Years of networking, deliberate access, and a connector who knew exactly what he was doing. That's a very different story. And once it spreads, the fairy tale loses its shine. And this brings us back to the brutal reality Meghan is facing now. Yacht-related allegations floated for years but stayed in conspiracy territory, until someone with Joe Rogan's reach started asking questions no one could silence. What used to exist quietly on the edges of online discussion didn't vanish with time. It lingered, waiting for the right moment to resurface louder than ever. For years, mainstream outlets brushed these conversations aside with a dismissive wave, labeling them gossip and moving on without hesitation. Royal watchers murmured privately, cautious not to push too far, knowing how quickly careers can end when certain lines are crossed. That was the rhythm for a long time. Whisper, dismiss, repeat. Nothing ever gained enough momentum to break through the protective wall surrounding Meghan's public image. The questions existed, but they never reached scale. Then the equation changed, not slowly, not subtly, but all at once, the moment Joe Rogan entered the picture. Suddenly, topics once considered untouchable were being discussed openly, repeatedly, and calmly in front of one of the largest audiences in modern media history. These weren't blog comments anymore. They were conversations happening across millions of living rooms, gyms, cars, and workplaces. That shift matters a lot, because when questions reach that level of exposure, they don't fade quietly anymore. They multiply. This is where the situation becomes uniquely difficult for Meghan, because her traditional media strategy simply doesn't apply here. For years, she's operated inside systems that respond to pressure. Tabloids can be sued, headlines can be corrected, statements can be issued, narratives can be guided through sympathetic journalists and carefully timed interviews. That method worked because it relied on leverage, legal, institutional, and reputational. It was controlled. Joe Rogan doesn't fit inside that structure. He's independent. He's based in the United States. He isn't dependent on royal access, Hollywood favors, or legacy media approval. There's no editor waiting to cut a segment, no board to appease, no palace connection to lean on. Any attempt to pressure him wouldn't silence the conversation. It would explode it. That's the irony. Trying to shut him down would instantly confirm his central argument that certain questions make powerful people uncomfortable. And that's exactly why this moment feels so different from previous controversies. So what's the response? According to multiple reports, it's silence, no statements, no interviews, no engagement. Just wait it out and hope attention drifts elsewhere. But here's the flaw in that strategy. Silence only works when the other side moves on. Joe hasn't. Every time he revisits the topic, millions of people hear the same unanswered questions again, reinforcing the sense that something is being avoided. And unanswered questions don't age well, they grow louder. Sources suggest the frustration behind the scenes is intense. Responding risks amplifying the discussion. Ignoring it makes the silence itself the story. It's a tight corner, and Joe knows it. That's why he keeps returning to the subject, not aggressively, not recklessly, but methodically. He doesn't make declarations. He doesn't accuse. He lays out timelines, access points, documented invitations, and visible connections, then asks simple questions and steps back. That approach is devastatingly effective because people trust conclusions they reach on their own far more than one's handed to them. Look at the power dynamic honestly. Meghan has elite lawyers, publicists, and long-standing industry allies. Joe has something harder to counter: credibility with his audience. Meghan issues carefully worded statements. Joe hosts raw conversations that feel unfiltered and authentic. Meghan curates access. Joe reaches more people than all those curated outlets combined. When you map out the battlefield, the imbalance becomes clear. Joe controls the audience, and audience trust is the real currency now. That's what makes this situation so uncomfortable for anyone trying to protect a meticulously shaped public image. Then comes the angle Joe keeps hammering because it resonates deeply: the double standard. Why are these questions considered off-limits here when similar situations involving other public figures would trigger non-stop investigation? If anyone else had documented access to elite yacht events, visible connections to ultra-wealthy power circles, and a well-connected facilitator opening doors, journalists would swarm, panels would debate, timelines would be dissected. But in this case, asking questions alone is treated as wrongdoing. That's the inconsistency Joe keeps highlighting. Why does curiosity get framed as malice? Why does inquiry get labelled attack? Why does scrutiny suddenly become unacceptable? And once that framing shifts, the conversation changes completely. It's no longer about whether rumours are true, it's about why asking about them is discouraged. That realisation hits hard because people instinctively question suppression. When questions are blocked, people assume there's something behind the barrier. That's human nature, not conspiracy. Joe understands this dynamic, and he uses it. He's not just examining Meghan's past, he's examining the silence around her past, and that silence becomes part of the story. So where does this go next? Joe isn't backing off. He's faced backlash before and emerged stronger. He's survived cancellation attempts. He's weathered criticism from every angle. Meghan's team can't intimidate him. They can't outreach him. They can't steer a narrative when one voice reaches more people than entire news networks combined. Because of that, topics once whispered are now openly debated. The yacht rumours are no longer fringe. The Marcus Anderson networking role is under real scrutiny. Soho House is no longer just a backdrop. It's central to the discussion, and this matters because reputation damage doesn't require proof. It requires repetition and unanswered questions. Once doubt enters public consciousness, perception shifts. Joe didn't make claims. He planted questions. And once questions exist in the minds of 200 million people, there's no rewind button. Now, the debate isn't about truth versus falsehood, it's about endurance. Can a carefully controlled narrative survive relentless curiosity amplified by the world's largest microphone? Because silence, tension, and avoidance communicate their own message. And this is where the Prince Harry angle becomes unavoidable. Joe hasn't just questioned Meghan's past. He's openly wondered what this means for Harry. He's mocked Harry before. He's questioned the relationship dynamic. He suggested ambition may have played a role alongside romance. If yacht allegations gain mainstream traction, if the Andrew connection becomes widely accepted as a legitimate question, Harry's image takes a serious hit. He stops looking like a prince who followed his heart and starts looking like someone who may not have known the full picture. Imagine being in his position. Imagine millions of people wondering whether your partner moved in elite circles connected to your own family long before you met. Imagine realizing that the love story you've shared with the world might be interpreted differently, not as chance, but as strategy. That's the scenario Joe keeps outlining, not asserting, outlining. And whether people believe it or not, the damage comes from the questions themselves. Once planted, they don't disappear. They linger. Harry can't easily refute them. He can't prove a negative. He can't erase documented connections. He can't explain access he wasn't part of. Sources suggest he's already unsettled by the resurfacing rumours, already questioning how much he truly knows about Meghan's earlier years, already wondering whether the palace's early concerns were rooted in more than bias. Because the royal family reportedly warned him. They raised questions, they urged caution, and Harry dismissed those warnings as jealousy and prejudice. But what if those warnings were based on intelligence Harry refused to hear? What if the very connections Joe now highlights were part of that concern? If Joe keeps pressing, stacking timelines, and pointing out inconsistencies, the narrative shifts again. It's no longer Harry chose freedom and love. It becomes Harry may have been outmaneuvered by someone who understood elite networking far better than he did. That's a brutal reframe, and once it sticks, it's hard to undo. Which brings us back to Soho House, an organisation mainstream media barely examines. Publicly, it's framed as a creative social club. Privately, it operates as a high-level networking engine. No photos, no recordings, no leaks, everything behind closed doors. That secrecy isn't accidental. It's the product, private spaces where powerful people can connect without scrutiny. Joe digs into that. He questions how introductions happen, who facilitates them, what patterns exist. He mentions Ron Burkle, a billionaire member with documented overlaps in controversial elite circles, not as an accusation, as a point of inquiry. Soho House can't deny facilitating connections, that's literally their business model, but they also can't investigate deeply without exposing how the machine actually works. Marcus Anderson becomes central here, not as a villain, but as a gatekeeper, a connector, someone whose job was opening doors. Joe isn't saying wrongdoing occurred. He's asking how the system functions. And once people start asking who met whom, how introductions were made, and why certain access points existed, Meghan's origin story faces pressure because the official narrative is chance, a random introduction. Joe suggests it may not have been random. That's the tension. Again, not an accusation, a question. And once that alternative interpretation spreads through millions of listeners, the fairy tale loses some of its shine. Which brings us back to reality. Meghan has no good options here. Yacht rumours lived in obscurity for years. Now they're mainstream conversation. Joe didn't invent them, he amplified them. The real issue now isn't whether they're true. It's whether Meghan can withstand Joe Rogan asking these questions in front of the largest audience in modern media. Because once people start wondering, there's no undo button. So think about it. Why haven't these questions been answered directly? Why does access remain unexplained? Why does silence persist? Joe Rogan has done something rare. He's taken whispers and turned them into open dialogue, without claims, without verdicts, without accusations. And as long as those questions remain unanswered, people will keep wondering what parts of Meghan Markle's past remain unexplained. Now, take a moment and think about it yourself. Do these questions deserve answers, or is the scrutiny unfair? Is this accountability, or something else entirely? If you've got thoughts, share them. Conversations like this don't move forward unless people talk. And if you want to keep exploring stories that raise uncomfortable questions and challenge official narratives, staying connected here just means you won't miss the next deep dive when it drops. Sometimes the most revealing answers aren't spoken at all, and silence in moments like this can say more than words ever could.
Another tissue of self-serving lies, mostly, I suspect. We don't know yet, but most of it looks like the Oprah interview, just another load of unsubstantiated smears.
And I think she's just got so used to lying that maybe, in my opinion, she believes the lies she tells. I don't know, but either way, she's just been so consistently loose with the truth.
I didn't know much about him, and so the only thing that I had asked her when she said she wanted to set us up was, I had one question. I said, well, is he nice?
Meghan has got no real income anymore. She's finished.
You know, it's just very bizarre how she just basically brushed the entire family under the carpet like we don't exist, and then lied about not having a family and lied about, you know, she doesn't have a family that she's always wanted.
You're complaining about your hard life and you're so privileged. It's just so weird.
The story you're about to hear has been reshaped into one continuous escalating narrative that pulls every claim, controversy and timeline into a single unfolding chain of events that keeps building intensity the deeper it goes into it. Reports suggest that Tom Bower reportedly spent years carefully reviewing archived materials, background documents, interviews, and detailed timelines that many journalists either overlooked or never fully connected into one complete picture, and this alone has fueled ongoing debate about how much context was previously missing in public discussions. At the same time, Piers Morgan has repeatedly commented on these same topics for years, consistently arguing that warning signs were visible early on, but were largely ignored until everything eventually erupted into global media attention that could no longer be contained. These overlapping viewpoints have kept the subject alive across media platforms, constantly reappearing in new discussions and interpretations. Together, their commentary and investigative framing are often grouped into what some describe as 15 major controversies.
They wanted to capitalize on all the publicity around the Kate announcement by saying, boom, by the way, don't forget about us.
They're just remorseless, selfish, false.
Harry's wife told the lie about her SAG membership. The Post explains, Harry's wife revealed that it was on Century City that she lied about being a member of the union. It was really stupid to lie and piss off the casting director for this show, because this role is never going to reoccur on this show. I didn't even see her in the rest of the episode.
Or secrets, stretching back long before she became a globally recognized public figure, even before royal associations entered the picture, and far before Hollywood positioned her as a recognizable entertainment name. Each layer adds more complexity, making the timeline feel increasingly dense and heavily debated. From the very beginning, this type of storytelling always carries a recurring warning tone, staying until the final segment is often emphasized, because the last claim is framed as the one that completely reframes everything that came before it. And that narrative structure is exactly what keeps this topic circulating continuously online with growing attention. One of the earliest controversies frequently discussed is the SAG card incident, which traces back to the beginning of her acting journey when she was still navigating the highly competitive environment of Hollywood auditions, where thousands of aspiring actors compete intensely for extremely limited roles and opportunities. At that point in time, there was no global recognition, no royal association, and no mainstream celebrity status. Just a struggling actress attending auditions, trying to break into an industry where even a single casting decision could dramatically change the entire direction of a career overnight in unpredictable ways.
Sussex is so contrived, so self-interested, so unbelievably appalling that one can only imagine that they really...
It's very unfair. Just leveled the accusation of Harry and Meghan as being contrived in the same breath as you admit.
During an audition for a production titled Century City in 2004, it has been alleged that she was asked about SAG membership, which refers to the Screen Actors Guild requirement often needed for professional acting work in union-regulated productions across the United States entertainment industry. According to widely circulated accounts, she reportedly stated that she was already a SAG member, even though official registration was not yet confirmed at that time, which later became part of the controversy when casting decisions progressed under union compliance rules and production requirements. Once she was selected for the role, standard Hollywood procedures reportedly had to be followed under the Taft-Hartley Act, which allows non-union actors to be hired and then formally integrated into the union system after being cast under specific regulated conditions in the industry framework. Critics of this situation argue that it reflects early ambition-driven decision-making and potential misrepresentation, while supporters strongly reject that interpretation, emphasizing that this is a common Hollywood mechanism used frequently for emerging actors entering professional environments where rules are often flexible in practice. Piers Morgan has referenced this moment as part of a broader argument about early behavioral patterns in career development, while critics of his commentary argue that he selectively highlights isolated incidents to construct a larger narrative, making this one of the most heavily disputed early claims in the entire discussion landscape.
The deeply personal letter was handwritten and allegedly sent by the Duchess in the months after her wedding, a wedding her father missed after it was exposed that he was paid to give interviews and pose for pictures.
You've told the press that you called me to say you weren't coming to the wedding. That didn't happen because you never called, the letter says. Meghan's dad has claimed she won't answer his messages, but in the letter, Meghan reportedly writes, "You haven't reached out to me since the week of our wedding, and while you claim you have no way of contacting me, my phone number has remained the same."
From that point, attention often shifts towards something even more foundational: her identity, specifically her name and how it evolved during her transition from private individual to public figure in the entertainment world. Publicly, she's widely known as Meghan Markle, but official records confirm her birth name as Rachel Meghan Markle, with Rachel being her original first name used throughout early life, schooling, and early professional environments before her entertainment career gained momentum. In early credits, school records, and educational contexts, she was reportedly referred to as Rachel, which creates a notable contrast compared to her later professional identity, where Meghan became the dominant name used in public recognition, media coverage, and global branding discussions. Even her breakout role in Suits, where she portrayed Rachel Zane, has been frequently highlighted by commentators as an interesting overlap between her real-life name and fictional character identity, sparking ongoing debate about coincidence versus intentional branding alignment in storytelling choices. Critics argue that the shift from Rachel to Meghan represents a strategic transformation toward a more distinctive and marketable identity, while supporters counter that name usage in entertainment is fluid.
Copycat Meghan Markle is facing another humiliation after it emerged that she has ripped off Pamela Anderson's cooking series in plain sight.
She has messed about, hasn't she? It's obvious that she's stolen it.
Breaking right now. Puff, copycat, whatever you want to call it, Meghan Markle is at it again. But can you believe she's been so revolting to actually do this to Pamela Anderson, someone who is very high profile in Hollywood, has reinvented herself and actually came up with an original idea.
Commonly adjusted for professional reasons and often influenced by industry norms rather than deeper intent or design. From there, the narrative expands into one of the most emotionally sensitive topics: her family background, particularly her relationship with her father, Thomas Markle, and the broader narrative surrounding her upbringing and early life circumstances. Publicly, her story has often been framed around being primarily raised by her mother, shaping a narrative centered on independence, resilience, and a self-made journey through a challenging entertainment industry landscape filled with intense competition. However, biographical accounts and investigative commentary suggest a more complex family structure, where Thomas Markle reportedly played a significant role in her upbringing, including financial support for education, exposure to television production environments, and early familiarity with entertainment industry settings. Thomas Markle worked as a lighting director on major television productions such as General Hospital and Married with Children, meaning she reportedly had exposure to production environments, cameras, and behind-the-scenes workflows from a young age, which some argue contributed to early industry familiarity. She also attended a private Catholic school, which was reportedly funded by her father, according to widely cited biographical sources, adding further layers to ongoing discussions about access, opportunity, and early developmental advantages within her personal history. Critics argue that this background complicates simplified narratives of a purely self-made rise, while supporters maintain that exposure does not guarantee success, and that achieving recognition still requires personal effort, persistence, and resilience in highly competitive environments. The relationship between Meghan and her father later became publicly strained, especially leading up to the royal wedding, when communication reportedly broke down following media controversies and public statements attributed to Thomas Markle. This situation has been heavily analysed by commentators like Piers Morgan, who described it as one of the most emotionally revealing fractures in her public narrative, while others argue that the situation is deeply personal and cannot be accurately interpreted through media framing alone. From there, attention shifts toward plagiarism allegations, one of the most widely repeated and heavily debated topics associated with multiple projects linked to her public career and media presence. Critics claim that several creative outputs have shown similarities to existing material, including speeches, podcast formats, lifestyle concepts, and children's programming ideas, which they argue raises questions about originality and sourcing practices in creative development. One frequently cited example is her 2015 United Nations speech, where the closing message was compared to a well-known statement attributed to Eleanor Roosevelt, a historically significant figure in global human rights advocacy. Supporters argue that such phrasing is common within humanitarian speeches worldwide, while critics insist the similarity was too direct and should have included clearer attribution to avoid confusion or misinterpretation among audiences. Beyond that, additional projects including podcasts, streaming content, and written works have also been compared to existing creative formats, although none of these comparisons have resulted in legal findings or official rulings confirming plagiarism. Still, the repetition of these comparisons across multiple projects has contributed to a broader narrative, suggesting a possible pattern, while supporters strongly reject that framing as selective interpretation that ignores how creative industries often overlap in structure and themes. From there, the discussion moves toward early public statements about Prince Harry, where she described their meeting as a blind date and reportedly stated she did not fully know who he was, only asking whether he was nice. Critics like Tom Bower argue that this version of events may not fully align with documented cultural awareness, social exposure, and earlier indirect familiarity with environments connected to British elite social circles. Reports and commentary point to earlier photographs, cultural references, and social overlaps that critics interpret as suggesting some level of awareness of royal identity prior to their introduction, adding complexity to the simplified blind date narrative. Supporters counter that awareness of a public figure does not equal personal familiarity, and emphasize that media storytelling often simplifies real-life encounters into clear narratives that are easier for audiences to follow. From there, the discussion expands into workplace allegations, with various reports describing tension, pressure, and staff turnover across projects and organizations associated with the couple's public and professional ventures. Some former staff members have reportedly described emotionally demanding environments, while others dispute these claims, arguing that fast-moving media and production industries naturally involve high stress, deadlines, and frequent personnel changes regardless of leadership style. Organisations connected to them, including Archewell, have experienced multiple staffing changes since formation, which critics interpret as instability, while supporters argue that evolving organisations commonly undergo restructuring as they grow and adapt. The narrative then shifts toward one of the most globally watched media moments in modern royal history, the Oprah Winfrey interview, which immediately became a massive cultural flashpoint upon release. That interview reached tens of millions of viewers worldwide and significantly influenced public discourse surrounding the royal family, media treatment, and personal experiences shared during the broadcast, creating long-lasting global discussion. However, after the interview aired, several statements and details were later clarified or reinterpreted, leading to continued debate about how certain claims were originally understood versus how they were later contextualized. One heavily discussed point involved the reference to a secret wedding, initially interpreted by many as a private legal ceremony before the official royal wedding, but later clarified as a private exchange of vows rather than a legally binding marriage event. That clarification itself became part of the broader conversation about how editing, language and framing choices in televised interviews can significantly influence audience perception when viewed by millions worldwide. From that moment onward, the entire discussion continues expanding into overlapping narratives, competing interpretations, and unresolved debates that remain actively discussed across media platforms, with no single version fully accepted by all audiences in the ongoing discourse landscape. What you're about to hear gets pushed even deeper into a continuous unfolding narrative where every claim, reaction, and controversy stacks on top of the other, creating a long chain of events that keeps escalating in intensity the further it goes into it. The claim that Archie was denied a title because of race instantly triggered a wave of global debate, mainly because critics pointed out that royal title rules were already established long before his birth, and those rules were designed to apply uniformly across generations without exceptions based on individual identity, background, or circumstance. These rules were not newly created or suddenly adjusted for one specific situation, but instead formed part of a long-standing institutional framework that had been followed consistently for decades, which is exactly why this point became one of the most heavily contested parts of the entire discussion. But at the same time, the conversation never stayed fixed on just the rules. It kept looping back to the unidentified family, member referenced in the original claims, the one allegedly connected to comments about skin tone, yet never publicly named, never officially confirmed, and never directly clarified in a way that fully resolved the situation. That missing identity became a kind of permanent gap in the narrative, and that gap is exactly what continues to fuel endless online theories, heated arguments, and interpretations that refuse to fade even years later. Piers Morgan quickly became one of the most central and controversial figures in this entire media storm after he walked off the set of Good Morning Britain during a live broadcast connected to these claims. And that moment instantly exploded across global media platforms within hours, turning into one of the most replayed live TV controversies in modern broadcasting history. That walk-off didn't just end at the studio. It triggered formal complaints, internal investigations, and widespread media coverage that placed him under intense scrutiny for weeks, with headlines, opinion pieces, and social media debates all dissecting every second of what happened on air. Despite all that pressure, he repeatedly maintained that he did not believe the claims made during the interview, and later stated that he felt vindicated by subsequent developments, although public opinion remains deeply divided, with audiences still arguing whether his stance was justified or overly biased, depending on which side of the debate they align with. Millions of viewers initially accepted the interview as presented when it first aired, reacting emotionally and taking the statements at face value, while others immediately questioned the framing and suggested that the situation was far more layered, complex, and context-dependent than what was shown in the edited broadcast version. As time passed, so-called receipts began circulating online. Clips, screenshots, articles, and comparisons meant to support different interpretations. But even those materials became part of the dispute because they are interpreted in completely different ways depending on perspective, leading to ongoing disagreement that shows no real sign of slowing down. Then attention shifted sharply toward the TIG, the lifestyle blog reportedly run starting in 2014, which later became a major focus once archived content resurfaced and began circulating widely across social platforms and commentary spaces. A major turning point came in 2017 when the entire blog was suddenly taken down, including hundreds of posts covering recipes, travel experiences, personal reflections, lifestyle commentary, and day-to-day insights, all removed without any detailed public explanation that fully clarified why such a complete deletion occurred. At the time, the disappearance did not immediately create widespread concern, but later commentators, including authors like Tom Bauer, suggested that this sudden removal might represent one of the earliest examples of highly controlled public image management happening behind the scenes before her global royal visibility increased. The blog itself had been described as a personal creative outlet that gave readers a more informal look into her life before royal involvement, touching on relationships, ambition, fashion, food and travel in a way that felt more personal and unfiltered compared to later public appearances. But once the relationship with Prince Harry became serious, everything reportedly disappeared almost overnight, with no detailed explanation provided to long-term followers who had been engaging with the content for years, leaving many people questioning why such a total digital wipe was necessary. Later, web archive tools managed to recover fragments of the content, and those fragments immediately reignited discussion, with some arguing that they revealed a more openly ambitious personality, while others insisted people were over-interpreting old lifestyle posts that simply reflected normal pre-fame blogging behavior. To be fully clear, none of these interpretations have ever been officially verified or legally confirmed in any way that resolves the debate, but multiple commentators have suggested that some deleted posts may have referenced a long-standing interest in royal life, which critics argue could conflict with earlier statements about not knowing Prince Harry before their introduction. Exactly what those deleted posts contained remains one of the most repeated unresolved questions in this entire discussion, with no official explanation ever fully addressing why the archive was removed so suddenly and completely. Then, attention moved into the widely debated baby shower event in New York, which quickly became another major media flashpoint due to its scale, guest list, and high-profile visibility. While traditional baby showers are usually private gatherings focused on close friends and family in intimate settings, reports about this event described something far more elaborate, with an estimated cost reaching around $500,000, instantly making it one of the most widely discussed celebrity pre-birth celebrations in modern entertainment media. According to several accounts, members of the royal family had advised against such a large-scale and highly visible celebration, especially given that senior royals typically avoid events that attract heavy press attention or appear overly extravagant in public perception. Despite those reported concerns, the event still went ahead, and immediately afterward, attention shifted toward the professional timing of several attendees, including Serena Williams launching fashion-related ventures, Misha Nonu relaunching her clothing brand, Amal Clooney continuing foundation work, and Abigail Spencer appearing in media-related projects. Because of this timing, critics like Piers Morgan described the gathering on air as resembling a coordinated media moment rather than a purely private celebration, while supporters strongly rejected that interpretation, arguing that successful public figures naturally continue their professional lives regardless of personal milestones. Tom Bower's commentary was also referenced in discussions around this moment, with suggestions that it represented a turning point where palace insiders reportedly began reassessing how media optics surrounding the couple were being perceived and managed. For many observers, especially those who view baby showers as simple family gatherings, the scale, cost, and visibility of this particular event created a sharp contrast that continues to fuel discussion and disagreement even years later. Every guest, according to critics, appeared to have ongoing professional projects at the time, which further intensified arguments that the event may have carried both personal and media-related dimensions depending on interpretation. Then the narrative shifts again into Meghan's early life story, which has been widely discussed and interpreted in very different ways depending on media framing and audience perspective. While some accounts emphasize a challenging rise through Hollywood, critics argue that her early life included significant exposure to the entertainment industry from a young age, which shaped her familiarity with production environments and media culture. Her father, Thomas Markle, worked as a lighting director on major television productions such as General Hospital and Married with Children, both well-known and long-running shows in American television history. Because of this, she reportedly spent time on television sets during childhood, gaining early exposure to cameras, crews, and production workflows, which some argue provided her with an early understanding of the entertainment industry. She also made a minor appearance on General Hospital and attended a private Catholic school funded by her father, according to widely reported biographical sources, which adds another layer to discussions about early access and opportunity. Critics argue that this background gave her more industry exposure than many aspiring actors starting completely independently, while supporters emphasize that exposure alone does not guarantee success and that career advancement still depends on persistence, rejection, and performance. Then attention turns toward Corey Vitiello, a Toronto-based chef who reportedly had a long-term relationship with her before Prince Harry, with their relationship widely described as serious and lasting close to 2 years, including periods of living together. The timeline between their breakup in May 2016 and the beginning of her relationship with Prince Harry shortly afterward has been heavily analysed, with commentators questioning how closely those events overlapped and whether there was any overlap in emotional or social timelines. Some sources claim Corey was caught off guard by the breakup, although these claims remain unverified and based on indirect accounts rather than confirmed public statements from either party. Corey himself has never publicly commented on the relationship or timeline, maintaining complete silence for years, which has only increased public curiosity and speculation about that period of time. Then, discussion moves into the Spotify deal reportedly valued at around $18 million connected to the Archetypes podcast project, which also became a major talking point in media analysis and industry commentary. Critics alleged that parts of production involved staff assistance in interviewing and editing processes, while supporters argue that this is standard practice in large-scale podcast production environments where teams are required to manage complex workflows. After one season, Spotify ended the deal, which sparked widespread debate about expectations, performance, and deliverables in high-profile media partnerships, especially when large contracts are involved. Then, a resurfaced 90210 pilot appearance from 2008 gained attention, where she reportedly appeared in a minor credited role labelled Hot Girl, which later went viral once she became globally recognised. That clip became widely shared online, showing how early career appearances are often reinterpreted years later through the lens of fame and public visibility. Finally, discussions move into pregnancy-related speculation, one of the most controversial and heavily debated topics online, where critics point to perceived inconsistencies in public appearances, while others strongly reject these interpretations as unsupported speculation that should not be treated as fact. Some commentators referenced body language and timing analysis, but none of these interpretations have been officially validated, and experts consistently warn against drawing conclusions based solely on visual interpretation without verified evidence. Official statements surrounding the birth followed standard privacy protocols commonly used by many public figures, meaning certain personal details were not publicly disclosed in full public reporting. Despite that, online debate continues years later with no consensus reached, and opinions remain sharply divided across audiences worldwide, with interpretations still clashing across different platforms and communities. The secrecy surrounding certain details has only intensified speculation, but nothing has ever been conclusively proven, and much of the discussion remains rooted in interpretation rather than confirmed fact. If you made it this far, you already know this entire topic continues to generate non-stop debate, analysis and disagreement across the internet with no final resolution in sight. 2 videos are waiting on your screen right now, and if you stayed through all of this, you already know there's still more to unpack beyond this point. If you enjoyed this breakdown, don't forget to hit like, drop a comment, and subscribe for more deep dives like this coming soon.
No, I choose people who don't want to be written about on the whole, whose lives are shrouded in mystery, and they want to hide their secrets. And I just love the king has been far too lenient with him. And that it's not just now this sex case.
The internet barely had a moment to catch its breath when Tom Bower, the man tabloids hail as Britain's most feared biographer, returned with another explosive media drop. He didn't just set off a bomb, no. He detonated an entire minefield beneath 2 of the most controversial names orbiting the royal world.
That there are 2 truths. The first truth is that the conversation, I'm told and I believe, was very early on in their relationship when Harry is bowled over
Meghan Markle and Prince Andrew. It all began in classic Bower fashion. A single, seemingly unremarkable teaser, a clipped 32-second interview preview. No context, no headline. Just Tom Bower leaning back in his chair, fingers steepled, a smirk tugging at the corner of his mouth. Sharp, calculated. That unmistakable glint in his eye meant one thing. He knew he was about to set the nation ablaze. And then he said it. One line. A line that ricocheted across the internet like a lightning strike. People would be shocked to learn how closely intertwined certain royal figures truly were, and who benefited. That was it. No names, no details. Just enough to send newsrooms into full-blown panic mode and every royal watcher spiraling into investigative overdrive. Within minutes, the speculation engine roared to life. The hashtag started trending before the clip even ended, and in the eye of the storm, the 2 names flew around like burning coals. Meghan Markle and Prince Andrew.
Well, yes, it is a bad look, especially for Prince Andrew, because he has always denied having any sort of sexual contact with Epstein's girls.
2 figures who, on the surface, seemed worlds apart. But suddenly, in the chaos online, their stories collided like magnets caught in a violent storm. What did Bower mean? What secret link was he hinting at, and why now? Theories exploded everywhere. Some said a hidden rivalry was about to surface. Others whispered it involved royal finances, insider politics, or palace tensions long buried under decades of secrecy. But the theory that really ignited the frenzy was the one that suggested Bower was poised to expose a shadowy chapter of royal chaos involving both Meghan and Andrew, one the palace had buried deep under a mountain of silence. As the world screamed for answers, Bower offered none. And by sunrise, the hype had swallowed TikTok, X, and every royal gossip forum imaginable. Screenshots of the teaser had been reposted more than 5 million times. Reaction videos went viral. Late-night hosts in the US joined in, cracking jokes while fueling speculation. But inside the palace, nobody was laughing. According to sources, staff immediately slipped into emergency damage control mode. Meetings went tense. Communications briefings became urgent. Hushed corridor conversations turned frantic. Whenever Bauer speaks, the world listens. A royal aide allegedly whispered that the palace braced itself for impact.
The world about his relationship, and there was no compulsion for him to do it. And that not only
because just 2 hours after the clip went viral.
What no one predicted, however, was just how quickly the story would erupt into full-blown chaos. 2 hours after the clip went viral, Bauer struck again, this time releasing an extended excerpt of his upcoming project during a live broadcast. Again, no names, but one sentence made royal reporters freeze mid-tweet. It is astonishing how events thought to be disconnected were, in truth, shaped by the same hand. Now, the internet wasn't just on fire, it was melting, and speculation was spinning completely out of control.
I was shocked at just how thin-skinned Harry is. You know, Meghan I almost understood. She's a Hollywood B-list to be charitable actress. She was a social climber. Her whole thing is about image, so I can see why she's so easy to upset.
Commentators dissected every word. Who was the same hand? Which events was he talking about? And why did the timing feel almost too perfect? The landing. Meghan was grappling with PR turbulence.
I do, and I think it has divided the nation and made us all, many of us, very unhappy on either side of the argument. I just found that Harry and Meghan, having said that they were setting up in California to spread wellness and love and sincerity, have done the exact opposite. They have dumped.
Prince Andrew was facing renewed media scrutiny. Critics of both instantly assumed the line targeted their respective subjects. Meanwhile, conspiracy theories and viral threads surged. Bauer's words were now being interpreted as a bombshell, linking both figures in ways the public had never imagined. The frenzy hit maximum velocity when insiders claimed Meghan's team was furious, scrambling to figure out exactly what Bauer intended to release. A PR source said her staff were contacting anyone who might know anything, panic in their voices. Meanwhile, Prince Andrew's camp had gone completely silent, a silence in the royal world that speaks volumes. The walls were shaking. Media outlets dove into archives, cross-referencing timelines, dragging up overlapping charity events, and unearthing old palace memos hinting at internal tension. Nothing concrete, nothing that truly matched the ominous tone of Bauer's clues. Then the first leak hit. A whistleblower inside a production studio claimed Bauer's new material would shock both American and British audiences and expose connections nobody realized existed. The leak spread like wildfire. Headlines exploded everywhere. Commentators spun theories. YouTubers churned out 20-minute breakdown videos dissecting every angle. In Montecito, sources said Meghan paced, phones ringing non-stop, lawyers and PR advisors on high alert. She felt targeted. An insider said she now believed Bauer was obsessed with her, and this only cemented the fear. Meanwhile, at Royal Lodge, Andrew's residence was reportedly grim. Staff whispered that he'd been warned. Old wounds the family thought were closed could reopen, and nobody, absolutely nobody, was prepared for what happened next. Bauer, watching the global hysteria unfold, finally broke his silence in a new online interview snippet. This time, he didn't speak in riddles. He leaned forward, eyes locked on the camera, and delivered the line that would send seismic shockwaves through the entire royal sphere. This is the chapter the palace hoped I would never write. The world gasped. Comment sections exploded. News anchors cut into programming. And suddenly, the question wasn't if Meghan and Prince Andrew were about to face a storm. It was how massive, how relentless, and which of them would be hit hardest. Whatever Bauer had uncovered, whatever he was preparing to expose, had both camps bracing for impact. And the palace knew one thing for certain. Tom Bauer never teases lightly. When he speaks, something big is coming. And this time, it wasn't just big, it was seismic. And two of the most controversial figures in modern royal history were standing directly in its path. Their worlds were about to collide in a way no one could ignore. The reaction to Tom Bauer's latest revelations
seemed to be a stereotype. I think that would now not occur. I think there were various things about her sexual life which I dropped out on the grounds of privacy laws.
Was instant, electric, and impossible for the royal world to ignore. Within minutes of his interview hitting the airwaves, the internet erupted. Commentators refreshed their feeds in disbelief as clips spread across social platforms faster than anyone inside Windsor or Montecito could even prepare for. And yet, even as outrage exploded, something else was buzzing beneath the surface. Fear. Not fear of criminal exposure. Bauer had accused no one, but fear of a needle he had touched that the monarchy had long tried to keep calm. His words weren't accusations. They were piercing interpretations, historical reframing delivered with the precision of a man who spent his career unraveling the mythologies of the powerful. Each sentence felt designed to ignite curiosity, push buttons, and hold a mirror up to the royal machine in ways that no palace aide could fully anticipate. And this time, two of the most polarizing figures in modern royal history were squarely in his crosshairs. Sources close to Buckingham Palace insist the institution wasn't blindsided. They knew Bauer's book was coming. They knew the press tour would be sharp. What they did not expect was how quickly the public would seize the most dramatic lines and make them explode across social platforms, fueling debate, outrage, and speculation almost instantaneously. What was meant as commentary on public behaviour, media manipulation, and the gravitational pull of scandal mutated within hours into breathless online theories, think pieces, and endless debate videos. Meanwhile, inside Montecito, the calm quickly dissolved into chaos. Insiders whispered that Meghan was stunned, pacing, fuming, demanding to know how Bauer had accessed anecdotes she believed were tightly controlled or buried beneath legal walls. She reportedly called multiple lawyers and advisors, desperate to regain control, each call amplifying the tension inside the estate. Harry, by contrast, was reportedly devastated, caught between anger and exhaustion. Watching yet another wave of scrutiny crest toward their home, he knew this couldn't be stopped. It didn't make it hurt any less, one insider said. Across the Atlantic, Andrew's corner of the royal world was no calmer. Whispers of worry trickled through his staff, with some claiming the story could reopen wounds the family had long hoped were closed, adding layers of anxiety to already tense corridors. Although Bauer's commentary centred on reputation optics and lingering fallout from past decisions, rather than new wrongdoing, it was enough to reignite debates the institution had been trying to move past. Past staffers locked down palace communications. The usual no-comment posture was deployed within minutes, and yet the damage was already done. Every headline, every social media clip, every viral debate added fuel to a fire that seemed impossible to contain. Royal experts began dissecting Bauer's claims with relentless precision. Live-stream panels lit up YouTube. Long-time commentators who rarely agreed suddenly spoke the same language. Bauer had struck a pressure point. Whether people loved Meghan, disliked Andrew, or simply felt exhausted by royal drama, it didn't matter. He had opened a new chapter of debate, fueled by the uncomfortable intersections of celebrity, monarchy, fame addiction, generational trauma, and public expectation. The world couldn't look away. As the frenzy reached fever pitch, subtle moves were quietly happening behind palace walls, deliberate, calculated. Sources described it as the tightening of ropes before a storm. Meetings were held. Communications teams reviewed scripts. Senior advisors examined timing, context, optics, always the optics. Every gesture, every word planned, measured, designed to control perception while Bauer's narrative raged uncontrolled in the public eye. While Bauer's revelations were technically interpretation, the public reaction had become a beast of its own, and royal institutions, perhaps more than any in the world, understand that perception often matters more than fact. Speculation ignited a wildfire. Some argued Meghan would launch a fiery counter-narrative. Others predicted she would remain silent, letting allies defend her. Analysts debated endlessly about who might be affected next, and which palace corridors would feel the reverberations first. Still more wondered whether Andrew would retreat into deeper obscurity or quietly encourage palace intermediaries to control the blowback. Meanwhile, Bauer remained entirely unfazed. He doubled down, not with new claims, but with the same icy composure that has always defined his work. If certain people don't like the reflection they see, that's not my problem, he said calmly. The line was replayed thousands of times on TikTok within the hour. Then something unexpected happened. A source inside Montecito claimed Meghan began drafting a personal response. Not a legal threat, not an official statement, but a carefully curated message to reclaim the narrative. She wanted to frame Bauer's commentary as obsession and bias, a decades-long pattern targeting women who challenged traditional power. She aimed to flip the scrutiny back onto him. Whether that strategy would work was another question entirely, but it demonstrated the mounting pressure on her team to act quickly. While her team debated messaging, something far more damaging bubbled online. Resurfaced clips, old footage, forgotten interviews, and half-remembered conversations tied directly into the themes Bauer had raised. Suddenly, everything Meghan and Andrew had ever said in public was being re-examined through a new lens. Video editors stitched montages, podcasters produced hour-long dissections, Royal Watch accounts racked up millions of views. Interpretation became theory, theory became narrative, narrative became viral, and then there was the palace's reaction. Disciplined detachment. Not a word, not a whisper, no endorsement, no denial. The oldest play in the royal handbook. Don't add oxygen to the fire. Yet with the inferno spreading, even this strategy felt uncertain. Behind the scenes, tension escalated between the Sussex camp and the palace. One advisor allegedly described the atmosphere as radioactive. Another said the monarchy had enough of being caught in crossfire. True or not, the effect was the same. Speculation spiraled, and through it all, Bauer remained smugly unbothered. An editor who spoke to him the day after the broadcast described him as calm, sipping tea, refusing to change a single word. He knows this storm, the editor said. He's lived through dozens. What people forget is he writes for the public record, not for royal approval. The institution has no power over him. Perhaps that was what frightened Meghan and Andrew most. Unlike tabloids, palace channels, or social media chatter, Bauer's work lives on, in libraries, archives, and the cultural bloodstream. And now, his commentary had caught fire. One thing was clear. The story was only beginning, and the world was watching every move, every whisper, every calculated step, and waiting for the next shockwave to drop. If you want more explosive royal updates like this, hit that like button, subscribe, share this video, and don't forget to drop your thoughts in the comments. Let's keep this conversation burning.
Program on Netflix failed to rank among Netflix's top 300 most watched titles between January and June. The New York Post.
The storm hit overnight, and absolutely no one saw it coming. Meghan Markle, the woman once wrapped in an aura of untouchable glamour, polished perfection, and carefully curated prestige, is now reportedly staring down a professional nightmare unlike anything most Hollywood figures ever encounter. According to multiple sources deep inside Netflix, the platform that once championed her star power is now describing a catastrophic collapse of her brand, and executives are said to be demanding millions in damages. Yes, millions. And insiders claim this situation didn't erupt suddenly, but simmered silently for months behind closed doors, where frustration had been steadily growing. Netflix insiders say the problems began with constant delays, mismanagement, and spiraling creative conflicts surrounding Meghan's high-profile projects, shows that had been promoted internally as potential crown jewels for the platform. Instead, they repeatedly missed deadlines, budgets ballooned far beyond projections, and internal teams quietly complained that Meghan's hands-on approach went far beyond a typical executive producer role.
Netflix has dropped its trailer for Meghan Markle's Christmas special. Let's have a look.
I love the holiday season. It's about finding time to connect with the people we love.
Yeah.
Embracing traditions.
I like this. The special hits the streaming platform on December 3, Kinsey. I'm not sure I can even hate watch this.
Some even whisper that she was micromanaging in ways no one expected, the kind of interference executives insist cost the company enormous amounts of time, momentum, and potential revenue. According to individuals familiar with the situation, the tension finally snapped during a heated, closed-door meeting last month. Netflix leadership, already exasperated by production setbacks and rising costs, confronted Meghan head-on. Sources describe the conversation as blunt, merciless, and shockingly direct. Executives reportedly laid out a detailed breakdown of missed goals, stalled content, and inflated budgets, and made their expectations unmistakably clear: recoup the losses, or the company would be forced to take legal action. Legal analysts say the stakes here are massive. The contracts Meghan signed reportedly include strict penalty clauses for delays, as well as provisions allowing Netflix to reclaim funding if a project fails to meet agreed-upon terms. Insiders familiar with the documents describe them as ironclad, so airtight that there is little room for reinterpretation or escape.
Out of the top 200 altogether, Netflix has made.
Now, those very contracts sit at the centre of what many are calling the most consequential professional shake-up of Meghan Markle's post-royal career. What happened next, however, is where the story takes an even more dramatic turn. Insiders claim Meghan flew into a private rage when confronted with Netflix's demands. Eyewitnesses say she stormed out of meetings, slammed doors, and even threatened to walk away from the partnership entirely. Several staffers describe her behaviour as frantic and unhinged, alleging she shouted at producers and legal teams, insisting the company had no right to challenge her creative authority or question her vision. The fallout has been swift and unforgiving. Hollywood insiders report that multiple projects once considered guaranteed releases are now suspended indefinitely. Marketing efforts have been paused, scheduled appearances have been either cancelled or quietly adjusted, and behind the scenes, Netflix is reportedly exploring every available legal avenue to recover millions tied up in productions that insiders say never reached the standards expected. And the consequences are far deeper than financial. The damage to Meghan's brand, once crafted with painstaking precision, is being described as devastating. Netflix had been one of her strongest platforms for reinvention, a stage where she could transition from royal figure to Hollywood power player, all while maintaining an air of exclusivity and purpose. Now, with deadlines missed, executives displeased, and potential lawsuits looming, that carefully polished image is cracking at record speed.
At least there won't be any more, as far as we know. I can't imagine they would want to have more, but I will spare you clips of it. It would get copyright.
Outside the Hollywood boardrooms, the drama has only intensified. Social media erupted almost instantly, with fans, critics, and gossip accounts picking apart every detail they could find. Hashtags like #MarkleMeltdown and #Netflix vs Meghan climbed the trending lists within hours, and the story shows no signs of slowing. Commentators say the narrative is brutally viral, painting Meghan as someone whose ambition may have finally outpaced her ability to manage it. Sources close to Meghan say she is in full crisis containment mode. Her PR team is reportedly working around the clock, desperately trying to reframe the situation as a fight for creative freedom, artistic control, and bold innovation. But digital analysts warn that these efforts are being drowned out by leaked internal information, insider accounts, and the rapidly growing perception of chaos surrounding her projects. And it doesn't stop there. High-profile Hollywood contacts are reportedly pulling back. Executives who once praised her vision are now said to be distancing themselves, wary of being linked to stalled or troubled productions. Talent agents, producers, and even celebrity collaborators are allegedly pausing or reassessing partnerships until the Netflix issue reaches some kind of resolution. Meghan's professional credibility, a brand she spent years shaping, is suddenly under intense scrutiny, with cracks showing in places she never expected. Even within her inner circle, the pressure is said to be overwhelming. Friends reportedly describe her as anxious, emotional, and unusually reactive.
Suddenly under intense scrutiny.
Scrabble, especially timed Scrabble. It's something that I've loved for a long time. I'm very good at Jeopardy.
Some insiders claim private conversations have revolved around fears of financial penalties, contract obligations, and the terrifying possibility that Netflix could publicly expose details that would further damage her reputation. And according to those same sources, the timing could not be worse. Meghan had been relying on a sequence of upcoming releases to strengthen her post-royal identity, but now those projects are stalled, leaving a dangerous vacuum for critics and commentators to fill with speculation. Meanwhile, media outlets that once celebrated her Hollywood ambitions are now rewriting the narrative, framing it around mismanagement, turmoil, and alleged meltdown moments. The situation has even drawn the attention of legal professionals, who point out that contracts of this scale often include powerful remedies that give platforms extensive leverage. These agreements typically allow the company to reclaim funds, enforce deadlines, and hold producers accountable for operational failures. In other words, Netflix may very well have the legal and financial power to recoup millions, or compel Meghan to honor the original terms or face litigation. But here's the most explosive twist. Insiders hint that Netflix is reportedly considering going public with its mounting concerns. If Meghan fails to resolve the situation behind closed doors, it wouldn't just be a first in celebrity media disputes, it could permanently damage her hard-earned reputation in Hollywood, shaking the foundation of her carefully constructed post-royal brand. Sources describe the scenario as a PR nightmare of epic, almost unprecedented proportions, one that could affect future partnerships, endorsements, and even her credibility as a content creator. And yet, Meghan's camp insists she is standing firm. Sources close to her claim she remains fully committed to her creative vision, confident in her instincts, and unwilling to compromise on the projects that have come to define her public persona and professional brand. Insiders, however, caution that this determination may come at a very steep cost. Netflix, they note, has far more leverage than Meghan in the current standoff, and the balance of power is heavily skewed against her as the saga continues to unfold. Industry watchers are now monitoring every development, with meetings, emails, production schedules, and internal communications all under microscopic scrutiny. Every tweet, social media post, and minor public appearance is being analysed as either evidence of careful strategic planning or outright panic. In the eye of this storm is Meghan Markle herself, reportedly in tears behind closed doors, confronting the frightening reality that her post-royal empire, painstakingly built with ambition, media savvy, and star power, could collapse before it ever truly flourished. In Hollywood terms, the stakes could not be higher. A celebrity's brand is their currency, influence, and bargaining power. Sources insist Meghan's brand is at a pivotal crossroads, one that could define the trajectory of her career for years. One insider chillingly summed it up. This isn't just a contract dispute. This is the moment Meghan Markle's Hollywood credibility is being tested, and the consequences could be devastating. The question on everyone's lips is simple, yet terrifying. Can Meghan weather the storm, or is this the start of a full-scale collapse? With Netflix reportedly demanding millions and the media circling like predators, the pressure is not only internal, it's intensely public, relentless and merciless. Social media erupted almost immediately. As whispers of Netflix's demands leaked, entertainment journalists, gossip accounts, and mainstream outlets began dissecting Meghan Markle's every move. Hashtags like #MarkleMeltdown and #NetflixVs Meghan shot to trending status within hours. The narrative painted a picture of a woman under siege, struggling to keep a carefully built brand from appearing dangerously fragile. Insiders suggest the leaks were deliberate. Some internal documents reportedly came from frustrated staffers who wanted the truth out, knowing the media would devour it. Screenshots of emails, budget spreadsheets, and production timelines circulated online, all pointing to a pattern of missed deadlines, budget overruns, and mismanagement. Hollywood insiders claim these revelations were enough to shake even Meghan's most loyal supporters. Meanwhile, Netflix is allegedly moving quietly but aggressively. Sources say the streaming giant has begun assembling a powerhouse legal team to explore every possible avenue. They are not bluffing. One insider stressed that Netflix intends to protect its investments, and when it comes to Meghan, they hold substantial leverage. Reports indicate that preliminary notices of financial recourse have already been sent, reportedly sending Meghan's team into a state of high alert. Staffers and advisors are working around the clock, scrambling to spin the story, reassure collaborators, and contain the damage. Morale among her team, however, is said to be plummeting. Whispered conversations are filled with doubt and tension. A former associate reportedly asked, "Is she really going to pull this off, or is it about to blow up in her face?" Sources describe Meghan herself as emotionally raw, confronting the gap between her public persona of calm control and the private reality of mounting pressure, scrutiny, and potential financial liability. Eyewitnesses claim Meghan has been seen in tears multiple times during closed-door meetings, struggling to reconcile the confident, in-control executive image she projects with the chaos and criticism building around her projects. One insider noted her emotional state as volatile, saying she has been crying, snapping, and lashing out, creating an atmosphere where colleagues reportedly feel like they are walking on eggshells. And yet, despite these intense emotional displays, Meghan reportedly refuses to back down. Sources say she is determined to fight for her creative vision, even if it means entering a full-scale battle with Netflix. She believes in what she's creating. One insider explained, even with millions at stake, she feels she's right, and that stubbornness is both her strength and her biggest vulnerability. The media storm only amplifies the tension. Entertainment journalists are digging deep into Meghan's projects, past statements, and production history, uncovering repeated delays, cancelled appearances, and shifting timelines. Every new piece of information feeds the narrative of a star struggling to manage both her brand and her high-profile projects, painting a portrait of chaos lurking behind the polished Instagram posts, public appearances, and magazine covers. Industry analysts warn that this is not merely a public relations problem, it's a career-defining moment. One expert noted that if Meghan navigates the situation wisely, she could emerge stronger than ever. But if it spirals further, she risks watching a once untouchable brand unravel in real time. Legal professionals also point out that the contracts between Meghan and Netflix leave very little room for negotiation, with clauses covering delivery deadlines, production oversight, and financial accountability, giving Netflix considerable leverage in the dispute, according to insiders. The network could potentially recoup millions already spent on projects that have yet to meet their contractual obligations. Some sources describe this as a financial trapdoor waiting to be sprung, and Meghan's legal team is reportedly scrambling to figure out how to respond. Meanwhile, social media continues to explode with speculation, leaks, and conspiracy theories, with fans and critics dissecting every possible detail, from the content of her shows to her recent public appearances. Everyone is trying to figure out if Meghan can survive this storm, or if the empire she has spent years building is about to implode. Influencers, commentators, and even entertainment journalists are weighing in, some defending her fiercely, others predicting a spectacular fall from grace, painting a portrait of chaos lurking behind her carefully curated public image. The online conversation has become a relentless echo chamber of doubt, scrutiny, and gossip. Sources say even close collaborators are starting to feel the pressure. Production teams, writers, and consultants who once praised Meghan's vision are reportedly uneasy with the current trajectory, with some allegedly pausing new projects until the situation stabilizes. One insider noted that hesitation spreads quickly in Hollywood, and with the stakes so high, fear of association with potential failure is growing like wildfire. Meanwhile, Meghan's PR machine has reportedly shifted into DEFCON 1. Staffers are working non-stop to spin stories, issue statements, and create diversions to protect her image. Every press release, interview, and social media post is now meticulously scrutinized and vetted. Yet leaks and the mounting public attention make it almost impossible to fully control the narrative. Even palace insiders are watching with a mix of concern and bemusement, noting that Meghan's high-profile Hollywood conflicts have once again collided with the media's insatiable appetite for scandal. Sources describe private conversations where advisors warned Meghan about the dangers of public overexposure, but according to insiders, those warnings were reportedly ignored. Industry observers are watching closely, aware that Netflix's next moves could set the tone for the entire entertainment sector. A high-profile lawsuit, financial penalties, or a public statement could not only shape Meghan's career, but also send shockwaves across Hollywood, signaling the potential consequences of missed deadlines or unfulfilled contracts. Some analysts argue this could become a cautionary tale, a lesson about the delicate balance between celebrity influence and corporate accountability. And at the center of it all, Meghan Markle reportedly endures tears, tension, and fury in private meetings, while the media paints a picture of chaos, uncertainty, and potential collapse. Sources indicate she is scrambling to regain control, but every move seems to generate new challenges, new headlines, and fresh scrutiny. One insider summed up the mood perfectly. She's brilliant, ambitious, and determined, but the combination of public pressure, corporate tension, and the weight of her own brand has created the perfect storm. Right now, Meghan is battling on all fronts, financially, legally, and emotionally. And as the drama continues to unfold, the world watches with bated breath. Hollywood elites, media pundits, and social media users alike are speculating, can Meghan pull herself out of this nightmare, or is the Netflix conflict the beginning of a collapse that could define her post-royal career for years to come? The tension is palpable, the stakes enormous, and the fallout is far from over. Don't forget to like, subscribe, share, and comment. We want to know what you think about Meghan's Hollywood battle.
Well, on Thursday, they'll quietly and apologetically release their $100 million documentary series on Netflix.
That is why Netflix have finally admitted, or revealed this week, that they are ending their relationship with her, which I predicted in my book. I mean, the book just shows exactly how Meghan's commercial ambitions failed right at the very beginning.
The irony is earth-shattering, isn't it? Harry and Meghan are the Duke and Duchess of gaslighting themselves. The entire show is a cynical attempt to manipulate viewers into questioning their own recollections of reality.
As ever, the truth is finally coming out when it comes to Meghan Markle's deal with Netflix, and as ever. And of course, it leaves Meghan massively.
The Sussexes face bankruptcy. They're going to run out of money. Not my words, but the words of the fearless Tom Bower.
That until then, until she came along, they would get money on the shake of a hand. She said corporate charities now have to produce corporate governance plans, and people don't give money without that. And he didn't understand that. He was impatient with all that.
But of course, since then, we've seen how she has completely exploited her position and become a global star at the expense of the royal family of Britain. That she and Harry were relegated so far down the order. She got everything she wanted, and then knew what she wanted and couldn't get, and that was a lot. That's why, of course, she never intended to stay.
As with all things Meghan and Harry, it would seem, the truth just doesn't really exist in their world. It's their truth, their version of it. Meghan also lambasted the entire BBC engagement interview as rehearsed and an orchestrated reality show, because that's the last thing she'd be engaging in, isn't it? An orchestrated reality show, like the Netflix series.
Tom Bower sees through this couple, and he's got previous on this because, of course, Tom Bower was the author of the original devastating book, Revenge. So you've got revenge, now you've got betrayal.
And now we're all paying the price. The monarchy is paying the price. But unfortunately, this saga has a long way to go, and it's going to constantly damage the royal family.
From the very first headline, Piers Morgan said this whole thing smelled off. Tom Bower pushed even harder, warning that the shine, the hype, and the giant numbers around Harry and Meghan's post-royal business life could end in a very messy fall. Now, in April 2026, their critics are pointing at what they see as the wreckage and saying, "We told you so," because if the claims being circulated are even close to true,
Harry and Meghan, the dreariest couple in the history of planet Earth, if you excuse the massive book deals, the Silicon Valley startup preaching videos about well-being, the podcast, the speeches, and the major network interviews with everyone from Oprah Winfrey to James Corden. But they've barely been seen or heard at all, have they? Well, on Thursday, they'll quietly and apologetically release their $100 million documentary series on Netflix. There are trailers for this, and viewers with sensitive stomach should look away now.
then somewhere in the United States, a mountain of unsold lifestyle products is sitting in storage, aging by the day, losing value, and turning what was sold as a glamorous success story into a full-blown public embarrassment. Jam, candles, honey, flower sprinkles, gift boxes, all of it tied to big branding, big promises, and even bigger headlines. And according to the narrative now exploding online, a huge amount of that stock is not moving. It is just sitting there, boxed up, stacked up, and becoming a symbol of a rollout that looked polished on the surface, but may have been shaky underneath from the jump. This is the version of the story critics cannot stop repeating. It is the story of a mega deal, a celebrity image machine, and a lifestyle launch that was supposed to scream luxury, influence, and unstoppable momentum. Instead, according to commentators like Piers Morgan and biographer Tom Bower,
Netflix series. Michelle Hussein from the BBC, who carried out the interview, said, actually, no, it was just an interview. Even the BBC's long-serving royal correspondent Nicholas Witchell, normally bent double to avoid upsetting absolutely anybody in royal circles, can't take it anymore. Nothing they ever say seems to stand up to reasonable scrutiny. And I say that as somebody who lost his last job presenting Good Morning Britain because I wouldn't apologise for saying I didn't believe Meghan Markle. Think about that.
It has become a cautionary tale about inflated headlines, expensive image building, and the brutal difference between publicity and real consumer demand. And the reason this has people glued to the story is simple. When you line up the money talk, the product claims, the warehouse chatter, and the weak sales accusations all in one place, the picture starts to look rough, really rough. So let's start where the loudest critics always start, with the number that grabbed the world by the throat. $100 million. That was the headline number attached to the Netflix deal, and it sounded massive, untouchable, almost unreal. Supporters celebrated it like proof that Harry and Meghan had outplayed the royal system and stepped into a glittering new Hollywood throne. Meghan was presented as a woman building an empire, a polished media figure moving from palace walls to California power. But Piers Morgan never bought the fairy tale for 1 second. He argued that the giant number was headline bait, a flashy top-line figure designed to stun the public, not a neat bag of cash dropped into their laps. Tom Bower went after the same issue from another angle. He did not just mock the number, he questioned the structure behind it.
And put into a rather attractive jar. We tracked the jar makers down too.
Development costs, production budgets, staff, branding, logistics, legal expenses, tax exposure, distribution, and overhead can chew through headline figures fast. So when critics talk about that $100 million, they frame it as a shiny headline number, not a clean personal payout. And once you strip away the glamour, this is where the mood changes fast. Strip it down, he says, and the maths starts looking ugly. Critics have argued that after production costs, taxes and operating burn, the truly usable money may have been far smaller than the public imagined. And that matters, because Montecito is not exactly a cheap place to keep up appearances. Tom Bower's angle has long been that the Sussex lifestyle depends on very high annual outgoings, and if the income side is unstable, then the whole thing becomes a pressure cooker. Security, property costs, staffing, travel, PR, legal fights, image maintenance, all of it adds up fast.
All this stuff. And these bundles right here, guys, are for a bookmark that she deliberately, I think, understocked to try and sell out other stock that's not moving. She did this, a month or two ago now? None of it's moved. It's all still for sale. We had the bundles, all still for sale. We have all this stuff. These were technically Valentine's Day, still for sale. All this, most of this stuff, guys, was made for Christmas, and it's still for sale.
This was found on Reddit. And the thread was started by, make sure I get attribute it. So it's Kiwi Love 777. This is a person who kind of discovered it. And basically what you do is you put in an absurd number. So 10,000, 100,000, most likely 100,000, million, whatever, of items into your as ever bucket, and it will let you know how much is still left in inventory and how much they can put in your cart.
So even a large deal can start looking a lot less life-changing if the drain is constant and the output is underperforming. Then comes the product story. And this is where the tone goes from skeptical to savage. Meghan's branding around jam and home-style goods was pitched with warmth, charm, and personal touch. It was sold with that soft focus image of a California kitchen, garden-fresh ingredients, handcrafted elegance, and a cozy luxury vibe. That image matters because it is not just about food. It is about authenticity. It is about making buyers feel like they are getting a piece of a carefully curated life. But Tom Bower, in the version of events pushed by critics, questioned how real that picture was. He reportedly looked into the sourcing and manufacturing side, and what he described painted a much less romantic image. Not some dreamy farmhouse setup, not some intimate hand-tended production flow, but commercial-scale facilities and ordinary supply channels, the kind of industrial reality that clashes hard with the intimate story being marketed to the public. And that is the issue that seems to keep enraging critics. It is not just about jam, it is about the gap between what was implied and what may actually have existed behind the scenes. Piers Morgan grabbed that angle and ran with it. Hard, he has repeatedly mocked what he sees as brand theatre, accusing the Sussex operation of selling image first and substance second. To him, the whole thing fits the label he has used for years: Grifters, a word he has thrown around publicly and loudly. Tom Bower's reporting gave that line extra ammunition because once questions about sourcing, manufacturing and scale enter the chat, the glossy kitchen story brand starts looking shaky to people already inclined not to trust it. Then, January 2026 made things even worse, at least in the eyes of critics, because this is where the internet did what the internet always does when it smells weakness. It started poking around. According to claims that spread online, people found a website glitch by loading products into a shopping basket in unusually large quantities. And if those reports are accurate, the glitch appeared to reveal stock numbers that were way bigger than the public's sellout energy suggested. That is the moment critics say the curtain slipped. The numbers being quoted were explosive, roughly 650,000 individual items, with a supposed retail value in the neighborhood of $21.8 million, allegedly sitting unsold. If true, that is not a small mismatch. That is a giant red warning light flashing over the whole brand story. And once those figures started circulating, the tone online turned vicious. People began asking whether the sellouts had been carefully staged, whether scarcity had been part of the marketing script, and whether the image of overwhelming demand was more performance than reality. The item breakdown only made it look worse. Tens of thousands of fruit spread gift boxes, tens of thousands of marmalade jars, huge numbers of flour sprinkles, massive candle inventory. It sounded less like a chic boutique drop and more like a warehouse begging for an exit strategy. For critics who already believed the brand was running on smoke, this was pure gold. They did not see a temporary slowdown. They saw confirmation. And then came the mocking details that make stories like this spread even faster. Complaints from buyers, chatter about product quality, and the kind of petty but damaging stories that punch holes in premium branding. One of the most repeated claims was that some candles allegedly arrived without a wick. That kind of detail is brutal for a luxury image because it turns the whole thing into a joke in one line. A candle you cannot light. A premium lifestyle item that instantly becomes meme material. That is the sort of thing critics love because it is simple, visual, and humiliating. Then there is the sales talk, and this may be the harshest part of all. According to online trackers and critics discussing January 2026 sales, the movement over a 48-hour period was tiny compared to the stock allegedly sitting there. The figure that keeps getting repeated is just 15 jars of marmalade and 39 gift boxes sold over 2 days. If that number is accurate, it is devastating. Not because 15 jars sounds small on its own, but because it sounds microscopic when set against the scale of the inventory claims. That is when Piers Morgan's long-running argument about the Meghan effect being overstated suddenly sounded to his supporters less like trolling and more like vindication. Tom Bower's line hits even colder. If the inventory is truly that high and the sales pace is truly that weak, then you are not looking at a temporary pause. You are looking at a slow, expensive countdown. Food products expire. Scented goods fade, packaging ages, trends move on, public attention shifts. A warehouse full of luxury lifestyle stock is not just stock. It is pressure. Every day it sits there, it becomes harder to turn into profit and easier to turn into loss. That is why the most damaging image in this whole story is not even the warehouse itself. It is the idea that goods connected to a much-hyped celebrity empire may have ended up being handed around just to clear space. Critics have repeated claims that millions of dollars worth of product could not be moved and that some items were allegedly being given away internally. Free jam in a break room has become one of those brutal little images that says more than a spreadsheet ever could, because nothing kills the aura of luxury faster than the sense that premium goods are quietly being treated like leftovers. And through all of this, Piers Morgan keeps counting the vanished magic, while Tom Bower keeps stripping away the fairy dust. One attacks with mockery, the other with cold narrative detail, but both land on the same message. The image did not match the reality. That giant Netflix number, the lifestyle glow, the handcrafted branding, the instant sellout image, all of it starts looking very different when critics place it next to questions about stock, sourcing, burn rate, and weak demand. Which brings us to the next brutal twist in this saga, because while Tom Bower was digging into factories, figures, and the mechanics behind the lifestyle brand, and while Piers Morgan was loudly enjoying every crack in the Sussex business image, the show that was supposed to justify the whole Netflix gamble was not rising to save the story at all. It was drifting, losing force, and quietly dying with love. What really pushed this whole saga from shaky to downright humiliating was not just the product mess. It was the collapse of the very show that was supposed to make Meghan look unstoppable. Meghan launched the first season in March 2025, but the reaction was weak from the start. The buzz never exploded the way her supporters expected, and by the time season 2 arrived in August 2025, the silence was even louder. It did not break into Netflix's weekly top 10 even once, and that alone gave her critics all the ammo they needed to start swinging. By late 2025, the picture looked even worse. Reports circulating online claimed the series had sunk to a shockingly low position on the platform, with some commentary placing it at number 1,217 and others going even further, saying it had dropped to 3,436 among Netflix titles. That number spread fast because it sounded brutal, and then came the claim that the second season drew only around 2 million total views. For a project tied to one of the most talked about celebrity couples in the world, critics saw that as a disaster, not a victory. And what made the whole thing look even colder was this. There was allegedly no grand statement, no public defense, no loud farewell. The series was simply treated like it had faded away. Tom Bower's view on all this has been absolutely savage. He has argued that Meghan does not have the screen presence needed to hold an audience in this kind of format. In his telling, a lifestyle series needs someone who feels natural, engaging, warm, and believable. Someone viewers want to spend time with every single episode. His criticism is that Meghan, outside of a tightly managed image, does not project that easy connection. That is his opinion, and he has not been subtle about it. Piers Morgan, of course, enjoyed every second of that collapse narrative and jumped on it in his usual sharp style. When Netflix reportedly shifted to a downgraded first look arrangement after the show's failure, Piers pounced with the kind of line that spreads because it is cruel and funny at the same time. He reposted a joke saying Netflix had basically given Harry and Meghan first refusal on their ideas, frustrating rival streamers that wanted the rights to say no first. That line travelled fast because it summed up the mood around them in one brutal hit. It was not just criticism anymore, it was mockery. And once mockery becomes the dominant tone around a celebrity brand, that is when the damage gets hard to reverse. But the deeper issue, according to Bower and Morgan, is not just that the show stumbled. It is that the stumble exposed a far bigger problem. They say the Netflix era was sold to the public as proof that Harry and Meghan had cracked the code: global fame, streaming power, endless influence, and easy money. Yet the more projects underperformed, the more critics started asking an ugly question. Was there ever a real business engine behind the image at all? Because if the flagship show cannot pull major numbers and the product line is drowning in unsold inventory, then the glamorous empire pitch starts looking less like strategy and more like branding smoke. And then comes the Tyler Perry chapter, the part that really makes this whole story feel wild. Back in 2020, when Harry and Meghan were scrambling after leaving royal life behind, Tyler Perry stepped in during a moment of chaos. He reportedly opened the doors of his $18 million Beverly Hills mansion to them and let them use his personal security team too. Critics and supporters alike saw that move as a huge act of generosity. He was helping a couple in transition, giving them shelter, privacy, and protection when the world was watching them like hawks. That is why the story now circulating in 2026 hits so hard. According to claims repeated in tabloids and gossip circles, Perry is done with them. Finished. The allegation is that Harry and Meghan still owe him a massive loan, said to be around $14 million, and that the situation has turned so sour, he allegedly cannot even get them on the phone. The detail that really stings is the one about unanswered calls, because whether every dollar figure is right or not, that image is poisonous. A man who helped them in their lowest moment now supposedly being ignored, while money questions hang in the air. Piers Morgan has used that story to hammer the same point he has made for years. How? He asks. can a couple attached to such huge headline numbers, Netflix money, Spotify money, Harry's memoir money, still end up with these kinds of alleged financial problems? How do people who are presented as financial power players end up in a situation where stories like this can even sound believable? To critics, the answer is simple and brutal. The money came in with huge expectations, but the spending and the lifestyle burned through the cushion faster than the public ever realised. Tom Bower's line has been just as harsh. Security alone, he argues, costs a fortune every year. Then you add the Montecito mortgage, staff, legal costs, PR, travel, brand overhead, product losses, consultants, and every other expensive piece of maintaining celebrity status at that level. In that version of the math, they are not living a relaxed California dream. They are stuck on a treadmill that demands millions every year just to stand still. And if one stream dries up, then two, then three, panic starts creeping in fast. That is where Piers Morgan says they made the fatal mistake. In his eyes, they confused being famous with being financially secure. They assumed public attention would naturally convert into long-term business success. But attention is not loyalty, and curiosity is not the same thing as customers spending again and again. The world may watch you, talk about you, argue about you, even obsess over you, but that does not mean it will buy whatever you put on the shelf. That distinction, critics say, is the crack that broke the whole thing apart. Which brings this story to the newest chapter, April 2026, and Meghan's headline-grabbing Australia trip, a girls' weekend, a staged event, a ticketed appearance in Sydney with prices reported around $3,000. On the surface, it sounds glamorous, stylish even, but the critics did not see glamour. They saw pressure. Piers Morgan summed it up with one word: desperation. Tom Bower's argument was even more cutting. If Meghan could not dominate the American market, the biggest consumer arena in the world, then why would Australia suddenly be the place that turns everything around? And here is the detail that makes the Australia angle look even more strategic than it first appeared. Back in September 2024, Meghan reportedly filed 12 separate trademarks tied to the lifestyle brand with Australian authorities: food, candles, clothing, dog treats, jewellery, home decor, and more. A whole spread of categories that suggest long-term commercial plans, not just a casual overseas appearance. Those marks were reportedly granted in 2025, and critics instantly connected the dots. To them,